Chapter 293. The trip to Xiangyang County had left a deep impression on Chu Xiaoda. It also made him firmly believe that standing on Chu Xiu's side was the right thing to do. When he brought the 9-branch Hall's token to Mo Tianlin, Mo Tianlin immediately started investigating Qiu Dongmao for him without a word. In Xiangyang County, he had seen the power of the Xiangyang Mo family. It was definitely more useful than the Eastern Qi imperial court. All the martial arts forces, big and small, and even the lone cultivators, had to give face to the Xiangyang Mo family. It was as if their word was law. At the thought that this power could help him in the future, Chu Xiaoda felt a little excited. Although the 9-branch Hall's power was not for nothing, and you had to pay as much as you gained, it was still better than Chu Xiaoda being alone and helpless. Chu Xiu asked in a low voice, "Is there a result from Qiu Dongmao?" Chu Xiaoda nodded and said, "There is a result. There is indeed something wrong with that Qiu Dongmao. A month ago, and even for this whole year, Qiu Dongmao did not go out. He stayed in Xiangyang County obediently. But after Qiu Xianxia rejected the crown prince sent one of his men to see Qiu Dongmao. Since then, Qiu Dongmao has bought many tonics and sent them to Qiu Xianxia. Qiu Dongmao has done this before, but it was just a way for him to curry favor with Qiu Xianxia. But this month, he has done it very frequently." A strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. He had already guessed what was going on. Although the crown prince was rather mediocre, he was not an idiot. It was fine that Qiu Xianxia stood on the side of the second prince. He could rope in Qiu Xianxia's son. Of course, the person he wanted to rope in was not Qiu Xianxia's eldest son, Qiu Dongning, but his illegitimate son, Qiu Dongmao. The poison was indeed from Qiu Dongmao. Chu Xiu could guarantee that the tonics he sent to Qiu Xianxia contained the poison of the begonia of July. If it were other martial artists, they wouldn't be interested in some ordinary supplements, but Qiu Xianxia was a simple person. He was the dignified owner of the Pegasus farm and a great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm. Most of the time, he only ate plain tea and rice. Therefore, he would never waste the things that Qiu Dongmao sent and would even share them with his family. Without Jiang Wenyuan's interference, Qiu Dongning would have been killed by the July begonia's poison. He would not have been poisoned, but killed by the rebound of his Shen Qi, which was very similar to Qi deviation. At that time, Qiu Xianxia's only way was to bring Qiu Dongmao over and train him as an illegitimate son. Qiu Dongmao had his weakness in the hands of the crown prince. The crown prince could also use Qiu Dongmao to do a lot of things. Unfortunately, a good plan was secretly destroyed by Jiang Wenyuan in the end. Once Qiu Xianxia died, Qiu Dongmao was no longer of much use. If Qiu Dongmao's strength was a little stronger, the Eastern Qi imperial court might let him manage the Pegasus farm. But now Qiu Dongmao had not even reached the innate realm. It was a joke to let Qiu Dongmao manage such a large Pegasus farm. At most, the Eastern Qi imperial court would give Qiu Dongmao some glory and wealth so that he could live a stable life. That was all. Of course, Qiu Dongmao was useless to the crown prince, but it was very useful to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had checked Qiu Xianxia's farm one by one. Not only did he not find any cultivation method, but even some precious cultivation resources and other things were not found by Chu Xiu. Mr. Liu did not take these things, nor did Qiu Xianxia, so the only possibility was that he had hidden them. Although Qiu Dongmao was Qiu Xianxia's illegitimate son, an illegitimate son was still a son, and his strength was no threat to Qiu Xianxia. In case of emergency or to leave a way out, Qiu Dongmao was very likely to know these things. Thinking of Qiu Dongmao's big reaction when Cheng Zhouhai was investigating the case, this possibility increased a little. After thinking about it, Chu Xiu asked, "Did you find any evidence this time?" Chu Xiaoda shook his head and said, "There was no evidence. The man sent by the crown prince only appeared once and never appeared again. And Qiu Dongmao did a very clean job there, leaving no evidence. Even the July begonia should have been given to him by the crown prince. Chu Xiu nodded. If that was the case, it seemed that he still had to take action. Chu Xiu had coveted the cultivation method in Qiu Zhencheng's hands for a long time, and he did not intend to share it with others. After getting the news, he went to Cheng Zhouhai and the others and said, "Everyone, now that the task in Eastern Qi has been completed, you can go back to the Guanzhong torture room to report." When Cheng Zhouhai heard Chu Xiu say, "You," he could not help but feel puzzled and asked, "Aren't you going back?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Although the Eastern Qi Imperial Court said that the case has been closed and the task has been completed, there are still some minor flaws that need to be dealt with at the end. I don't need your help with these. I can handle it myself, and I will go back soon." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Cheng Zhouhai understood that Chu Xiu still had some personal affairs that needed to be dealt with, but he just wanted to use the Guanzhong torture room as a cover. This kind of thing was harmless. They were not Wang Qianping, who had to make things difficult for Chu Xiu. Making things convenient for others was also convenient for oneself, so Cheng Zhouhai and the others said directly, "Well, we will wait for you in the Guanzhong torture room, Brother Chu. Brother Chu, please rest assured that we will not speak carelessly when we report the situation of the case. Brother Chu, no one can take away your credit." If they went back together, it would naturally be Chu Xiu who would report the situation to Guan Siyu. But now that Chu Xiu was going back a little later, Guan Siyu would certainly ask them first. However, they did not want to become enemies with Chu Xiu, so they naturally would not trick Chu Xiu in this kind of thing. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I trust the characters of Brother Cheng and the others. In that case, I will take my leave for now." After that, Chu Xiu immediately went to Qiu Zhencheng's manor to find Qiu Dongmao. At this time, Qiu Zhencheng's manor was still sealed by the Dragon Rider's imperial army. At present, the matter with Jiang Wenyuan had been resolved, but it was still unknown how to deal with the Pegasus pasture, so the place was still in a state of lockdown. Seeing Chu Xiu arrive, the Dragon Rider's imperial army guarding the gate cupped his hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Official Chu." The Dragon Rider's imperial army also knew that Chu Xiu had also participated in the battle to kill Jiang Wenyuan. Moreover, he seemed to have a good relationship with their general Fang Zhenqi. Therefore, the Dragon Rider's imperial army was very polite to Chu Xiu. Looking around, Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Where are Qiu Dongmao and the others?" The Dragon Rider imperial army shook his head and said, "I don't know. Yesterday, he was here to keep watch for his father. However, after learning of Jiang Wenyuan's death, he left with the 5 heroes of Jiangdong overnight." Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Left? Where did they go?" The Dragon Rider imperial army said, looking at the direction, "It should be the west. I heard them say that they wanted to hurry to the Black Glazed City in the west as soon as possible." Black Glazed City? What was Qiu Dongmao doing there? Half of this so-called Black Glazed City was actually a mine. Its most famous production was a strange gemstone called Black Glazed. It was cold all over and could be used as a precious ornament. It could also be used to set up formations and was very expensive. In Chu Xiu's opinion, Qiu Dongmao should have either returned to Shangyang or went to Eastern Qi's Great Liang City to seek refuge with the Crown Prince. Why would he go there? But then Chu Xiu realized that Qiu Dongmao had gone to Black Glazed City to seek refuge with the Crown Prince. The princes of Eastern Qi all had considerable power and each had their own fiefdoms. If Chu Xiu remembered correctly, Black Glazed City was one of the Crown Prince's fiefdoms. Shangyang was used by Qiu Zhencheng to settle Qiu Dongmao. Naturally, he didn't want to go back. In Great Liang City, the Crown Prince was reprimanded by the Emperor of Eastern Qi, Lu Haochang. He was now in closed-door meditation. Qiu Dongmao's identity was a little sensitive, so he naturally didn't want to see Qiu Dongmao. Black Glazed City was the Crown Prince's fiefdom and the place where Black Glazed was produced. It could be said that it was very important to the Crown Prince. The crown prince had a lot of power there. If Qiu Dongmao went there, his safety would be guaranteed. At the same time, the crown prince would have to arrange an escape route for him. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Qiu Dongmao was quite smart. He must have sensed some danger and left in a hurry. But how could Chu Xiu let go of something that he had his eyes on so easily? Qiu Dongmao wouldn't be able to escape from Chu Xiu's palm. At this time, on the way to Black Glazed City, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong escorted Qiu Dongmao all the way to Black Glazed City. This was also the last time they would escort Qiu Dongmao. This time, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong came here for 2 reasons. One was to protect Qiu Dongmao, the only son of their benefactor, and the other was to avenge their benefactor, Qiu Xianxia. But now that the Eastern Qi imperial court had announced that Prince Anil, Jiang Wenyuan, had colluded with diabolism to kill Qiu Xianxia, they naturally didn't need to avenge Qiu Dongmao. They could leave after escorting Qiu Dongmao on his last journey. Qiu Dongmao walked in a hurry along the way as if someone was chasing him. In fact, he was afraid. He knew that Jiang Wenyuan and the crown prince were working together. But he never expected that the people from the Guanzhong torture room would find out about the crown prince and directly take down Jiang Wenyuan. Since the Guanzhong torture room could find out about Jiang Wenyuan, would they find out about him too? Qiu Dongmao couldn't guarantee this. Especially the leader of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu. Every time he saw Chu Xiu, Qiu Dongmao felt a sense of fear. In front of him, he seemed to be naked and could be seen through at any time. So after receiving the news of Jiang Wenyuan's death and the destruction of Prince Anil's residence, Qiu Dongmao secretly sent a message to the crown prince. The person told him not to come to Daliang City, but to go to Black Glazed City first. Once there, the crown prince would make arrangements. Of course, the actual situation was that the crown prince, Lv Longji, was a little overwhelmed. He didn't have the time to care about Qiu Dongmao. He would first throw Qiu Dongmao to Black Glazed City. But at this time, among the people who had been quietly rushing along, Wu Tiandong suddenly asked curiously, "Young Master Qiu, why are you in such a hurry to go to Black Glazed City?" Chapter 294. The Jiangdong 5 heroes had a good impression of Qiu Dongmao. In their eyes, Qiu Dongmao was humble, polite, and filial. Apart from his slightly weaker strength, he was far better than Qiu Xianxia's eldest son, Qiu Dongning. They had gotten along well on the way to the Ji State Prefecture, so when Qiu Dongmao mentioned going to Glazed Ink City, they agreed without hesitation. Under Qiu Dongmao's urging, they did not even ask why Qiu Dongmao was in such a hurry. Now that Wu Tiandong asked, the others also looked at Qiu Dongmao with curious eyes. Qiu Dongmao didn't panic in the face of everyone's stares. After such a long time, he had already thought of an excuse. Qiu Dongmao sighed and said, "In fact, when Jiang Wenyuan died, I had already guessed the cause of my father's death. My father was not killed by Jiang Wenyuan, but by the internal strife of the Eastern Qi royal family. My father was the owner of the Pegasus farm and was very important to Eastern Qi, so both the crown prince and the second prince wanted to recruit my father. However, my father was very strict with the rules. The crown prince was the heir, so he naturally had to stand on the crown prince's side. As a result, the second prince bore a grudge against him. Not only did he send someone to kill my father, he even invited Chu Xiu from the Guanzhong torture room to distort the truth. Chu Xiu had secretly come to the Zhuangzi and secretly contacted General Fang Zhenqi of the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army. Fang Zhenqi was one of the second prince's men. You know what happened next. Under the second prince's schemes, Prince Anil, Jiang Wenyuan, was killed, and the crown prince was reprimanded by His Majesty and ordered to go into seclusion. The ones who really benefited were the second prince and Chu Xiu. You all know Prince Anil's reputation. He was kind and courteous. How could he have colluded with demons and killed my father? All of this was just an excuse. Now that King Enlu is dead and His Highness the Crown Prince is heavily injured, I'm worried that the second prince's subordinates will collude with Chu Xiu and attack me. That's why I left in a hurry, wanting to go to Glazed Ink City. That is the Crown Prince's fief and is protected by many masters under the Crown Prince's command. Neither the second prince nor Chu Xiu would dare to act rashly. Qiu Dongmao was a genius. In a short period of time, he had thought of all these excuses and completely turned the situation around. Everything he said was the truth, but everyone's standpoint had changed completely, so it seemed abnormally real. Furthermore, Qiu Dongmao was right. The Crown Prince had indeed been reprimanded and reprimanded. Chu Xiu had indeed come to the manor that day and had a secret meeting with Fang Zhenqi. They had all seen it. As for Jiang Wenyuan, he had a good reputation in the martial arts world of Eastern Qi. Most importantly, Jiang Wenyuan was famous for being courteous and courteous. At least for most of the individual cultivators and warriors, Prince Anil was indeed a man worth following. The 5 freaks of Jiangdong also admired Jiang Wenyuan's reputation. If they were not motivated to be chivalrous and help the needy, they might have joined Jiang Wenyuan's team. This time, when they heard that Chu Xiu killed Jiang Wenyuan, their hatred for Chu Xiu deepened. However, because the Eastern Qi Imperial Court announced that Jiang Wenyuan had colluded with demons, Chu Xiu's killing of Jiang Wenyuan was for the martial arts world. This made them have no excuse to curse Chu Xiu in secret. Now, according to Qiu Dongmao, all of this was a conspiracy between the second prince and Chu Xiu. The 5 freaks of Jiangdong looked at each other. They did not expect that things would change in this way. Qiu Zhensheng's death was involved in the internal strife of the royal family of Eastern Qi. The few of them were all rogue cultivators. Their strength was not bad, but they had never seen such a big scene. They had only heard of the drama of the royal family's internal strife in movies. They did not expect to encounter it themselves. Cheng Buhui sighed and said, "Master Qiu, please restrain your grief. I only regret that we are not capable enough to avenge our benefactor." According to Qiu Zhensheng, the real murderer was the second prince, but they could not really kill the second prince of Eastern Qi and then be hunted by the whole world, could they? Moreover, even if they wanted to, they did not have the strength to do so. Qiu Dongmao shook his head with red eyes and said, "Don't worry, Master Cheng. His Royal Highness is a generous man. When His Royal Highness ascends the throne in the future, he will avenge my father." Cheng Buhui nodded and looked at the sky. "It's getting late. If I remember correctly, there is an inn in front. Let's go and have a rest." Qiu Dongmao gave it some thought and nodded in agreement. He was very anxious when he left a few days ago, afraid that Chu Xiu would find him. However, he heard from some travelers that the Eastern Qi royal family had closed the case and confirmed that Qiu Zhensheng was killed by Jiang Wenyuan. If that was the case, did it mean that he was safe for the time being? Moreover, he did not see anyone chasing after him for the past few days, which made Qiu Dongmao feel relieved. It was time for him to rest. Cheng Buhui and the others were all at the 5 Qis collecting in the Origin realm and the 3 flowers at Prominence realm. It would not be a problem for them to travel for a month, let alone a few days. However, Qiu Dongmao was only at the blood condensation realm, and his own strength was very weak. A few days of continuous travel was already too much for him. After walking along the official road for less than an hour, there was indeed a small inn on the side. Cheng Buhui and the others pushed the door open and entered. There were not many people, only some traveling merchants and some lone cultivators. Seeing Cheng Buhui and the others come in, the eyes of the people in the inn suddenly lit up. A few people took the initiative to come over and salute. "May I ask if you are the 5 heroes of Jiangdong?" Cheng Buhui and the others smiled and saluted, "Yes." Qiu Dongmao frowned slightly behind them. He still did not want them to reveal their whereabouts. If there were really people following them, it would be easy to find out their whereabouts from these lone cultivators. However, since Cheng Buhui and the others had already spoken, he could not stop them. The few lone cultivators were immediately overjoyed when they heard this. They said, "I have long heard of the famous 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Now that I have seen you today, you 5 heroes are indeed extraordinary. We are truly blessed." As they spoke, they immediately began to flatter them. Not only were Cheng Buhui and the others famous in the land of Jiangdong, but they were also quite famous in eastern Qi. Moreover, the 5 of them had such unique characteristics that they were easily recognized. Some of these unaffiliated martial artists had not even reached the innate realm. If they went to greet other martial artists in the 3-flower realm or the 5 Qis gathering in the origin realm, they would probably be ignored. However, Cheng Buhui and the others were also unaffiliated martial artists, so they did not have that many bad habits. They were very friendly and greeted everyone one by one. Seeing the attitude of Cheng Buhui and the others, the lone cultivators present were also amazed. As expected of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Just their temperament alone was different from other martial artists. After exchanging greetings with the martial artists present, Cheng Buhui immediately ordered a pile of food and asked the innkeeper to book a few superior rooms for them so that they could rest after the meal. However, just as they were about to finish their meal, the door of the inn was suddenly pushed open. A cold aura with the smell of blood suddenly drifted inside, causing everyone present to shiver uncontrollably. "Qiu Dongmao, you have quite an appetite. Your father's body is still warm, and he has not been buried yet. Instead of burying him, you are still in the mood to eat here. You sure have a big heart." A figure stepped into the inn. His black clothes seemed to have merged with the night outside. Even the long saber at his waist was surrounded by pitch-black demonic qi, exuding a sense of deathly stillness. "Chu Xiu!" Qiu Dongmao exclaimed, and the chopsticks in his hand fell to the ground. When everyone present heard the 2 words, Chu Xiu, they could not help but shiver. Today, not only did they see the famous 5 heroes of Jiangdong in eastern Qi, but they also saw the infamous Chu Xiu in the land of eastern Qi. What day was today? Why did they all come here? It had not been long since the God Weapon Conference. The deeds that Chu Xiu had done in the Ji State Prefecture were still circulating in the land of eastern Qi. To exaggerate, his reputation in eastern Qi was even greater than in Guanzhong. The moment he saw Chu Xiu, Cheng Buhui immediately pulled out the heavy sword on his back. The other 4 also pulled out their weapons and looked at Chu Xiu with vigilance. Looking at the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, Chu Xiu said calmly, "Do you know who you are protecting now? He is a guy who dared to poison his own father and wanted to kill his own brother to take over the throne. He is a cruel and merciless man. Qiu Xianxia's case is not over yet." Although Qiu Xianxia died in the hands of Jianghu Yuan, young Master Qiu added fuel to the fire. "Now, on behalf of the Guanzhong torture room and the Eastern Qi Imperial Court, I want to arrest him and bring him to justice. By protecting him, are you going against the order of the Eastern Qi Imperial Court?" Wu Tiandong sneered and said, "Chu Xiu, we already know the truth. You can fool others with your high-sounding reasons, but don't try to fool us." Cheng Buhui also said in a low voice, "Chu Xiu, when it's possible to let someone off, one should spare them. You've already obtained enough by cooperating with the second prince. Prince Enlu is dead, and His Highness the Crown Prince has been punished by His Majesty. You've already obtained enough rewards. At present, young Master Qiu is no longer a threat to you. He is just the last bloodline of our benefactor. Do you really have to kill him?" Hearing the specious words of Cheng Buhui and the others, Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and looked at Qiu Dongmao. This guy must have said something to the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, otherwise, the 5 of them would not have such an attitude. At this time, Qiu Dongmao also looked at Chu Xiu fearlessly. He was not afraid that Chu Xiu would tell the truth. First impressions were the strongest. Would the 5 heroes of Jiangdong believe him, who had always been on good terms with them, or would they believe Chu Xiu, who was notorious and had conflicts with them? There was no doubt about it. Chapter 295. The conversation between Chu Xiu, Cheng Buhui, and the others left everyone dumbfounded. They seemed to have heard something extraordinary. What they had talked about before was actually related to the recent case of Qiu Zhencheng, the owner of the Pegasus Ranch, the struggle between the princes of Eastern Qi, and the death of Jiang Wenyuan, the prince of Anil. It sounded like something extraordinary. They did not even dare to listen to such a big gossip. Chu Xiu squinted at Qiu Zhencheng and said lightly, "You are clever. These 5 stupid guys have been fooled by you, haven't they? Since you are prepared, I will also give you a chance. I can promise not to kill you, but you have to tell me where all the things left by Qiu Zhencheng are." Jiang Wenyuan sent someone to kill Qiu Zhencheng, and I killed Jiang Wenyuan. It can be regarded as revenge for him. It is reasonable for me to ask for some compensation, isn't it? Qiu Dongmao was taken aback. He had thought that Chu Xiu had been sent by the second prince to kill him, or that the matter of him giving the Qiu family July begonia had been exposed. But now, it seemed that Chu Xiu had acted on his own. Even so, Qiu Dongmao did not intend to admit it. Now that Qiu Zhencheng was dead, as the only son of Qiu Zhencheng, those things would naturally be left to him. These were one of his future assets. How could he just give them to Chu Xiu? Moreover, he did not know whether Chu Xiu was telling the truth or not. Even if Chu Xiu was telling the truth and he admitted it, the 5 people around him might immediately attack and directly tear him into pieces. Although the 5 heroes of Jiangdong were benevolent and righteous, they were warriors who had been in Jianghu for so many years and had killed many people. If they found out that he was lying to them, there was no need to think about what would happen to him next. However, before Qiu Dongmao could speak, Wu Tiandong had already pointed at Chu Xiu with a knife and shouted, "Bastard! Who are you calling an idiot?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Don't add drama. I didn't say that you are idiots. I just said that you are a little stupid." Although Wu Tiandong did not know what drama meant, he could tell from Chu Xiu's attitude and voice that what Chu Xiu said was probably not good. Qiu Dongmao pulled Wu Tiandong aside and said to Chu Xiu in a deep voice, "Chu Xiu, you don't have to lie to me. I've already told the heroes about your conspiracy with the second prince. Don't even think about doing anything about it. Now that my father's body is still cold, I naturally feel guilty, but if I continue to stay in G state, I will have to go to the underworld to accompany my father. But now, I have the protection of the 5, Chu Xiu, and you, Xiu Xiu, king, and Xiu, and Xiu. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. In fact, I will not do things to the extreme every time. This time, I gave you a chance, but you did not cherish it. You can't blame me for this." He pulled out the heavenly demon dance from his waist, and in an instant, the cold devil chi lingered in the entire inn, causing the other warriors in the inn to immediately retreat in panic. If they were seriously injured because of watching the show, it would not be worth it. In fact, this time, Chu Xiu was really going to give Qiu Dongmao a chance, because he only wanted the martial arts in Qiu Zhencheng's hands. As for other things, Chu Xiu was not interested. Maybe before Qiu Zhencheng died, he did not expect that the martial arts he accidentally obtained would have such power. Qiu Dongmao naturally did not know, and Chu Xiu was not worried that he would leak anything. As long as the other party was willing to cooperate obediently, Chu Xiu did not mind letting him live. But it was a pity that Qiu Dongmao chose a dead end, so he could not blame Chu Xiu for being cruel and merciless. Seeing Chu Xiu pull out his saber, Cheng Buhui and the other 4 immediately stood in front of Qiu Dongmao, not retreating at all. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Are you really going to stop me? You should know that behind me stands the Guanzhong torture room and the Eastern Qi Imperial Court. I said that Qiu Dongmao was one of the murderers of Qiu Zhencheng. No matter whether there is evidence or not, the Eastern Qi Imperial Court will believe it, the Guanzhong torture room will believe it, and so will the people in Jianghu. Now, only you don't believe it. In the end, the reputation of the 5 freaks of River East will be ruined as well. Cheng Buhui said in a low voice, when the 5 of us became sworn brothers, we once said that when we see injustice, we do chivalry and help the weak. What we seek is not fame, but peace of mind. The title of the 5 freaks of River East is not what we want. We are all people in Jianghu who favor us. Now if they want to take it back, we have no objection, as long as we have a clear conscience. The person I, Cheng Buhui, admire the most in this life is the previous hall master of the Guanzhong torture room, great hero, Chu Kuanga. He used martial arts to stop war, even if there were millions of people, he would still go forward. But you, Chu Xiu, are now using the name of the Guanzhong torture room for your own selfish desires. You are blinded by greed and indiscriminately killed the innocent. You are not a member of the Guanzhong torture room. Chu Xiu shook his head. Stubborn and stubborn. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu's body moved. Without any warning, he slashed towards the 5 of them with his saber. The surging demonic aura was mixed with boundless blood qi. The might of this attack was simply extremely demonic. Cheng Buhui shouted, Lao Er, Lao San, you two attack. As soon as he finished speaking, second brother, Dong Xiangyi, and third brother, Blood Avoidance Sword, Lu Tong, had already rushed out. Cheng Buhui had seen Chu Xiu attack before. Although the 4th prince, Wu Tiandong, was not the top among those in the 3-flower realm, he was still not bad. However, he could not even block one move from Chu Xiu. Therefore, this time, Cheng Buhui did not want Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing, who were both in the 3-flower realm, to attack. Instead, he asked second brother and third brother, who were in the 5 Qi's origin realm, to attack. He stayed in the back to coordinate, afraid that other pursuers would come. The 5 freaks of River East were so famous in the land of Eastern Qi not only because of their chivalrous deeds, but also because they were not weak themselves. The weapon in second brother, Dong Xiangyi's hand was very strange. He usually held a fan and wore a brocade robe, looking like the son of an aristocratic family. But at this time, when he attacked, blood-colored blades shot out from the folding fan. When they flew across the sky, the blood-colored gang qi extended for dozens of feet. Dong Xiangyi's accumulation of gang qi was also extremely powerful. He had almost reached the peak of the 5 qis collecting in mind. As for third brother, Blood Avoidance Sword, Lu Tong, his attack was a standard swordsman style. His sword technique was fast and strange. He stabbed out with a thin sword in his hand, and the sword momentum was so fast that it was impossible to see the traces. In all fairness, these 2 people were not weak. Chu Xiu had also fought against martial artists in the 5 Qi's origin realm, such as Wei Mok from the 9 Plains Wei family. However, in terms of strength, Dong Xiangyi and Lu Tong were both above Wei Mok. Chu Xiu pinched the internal binding seal and quickly retreated. As soon as Lu Tong's extremely fast sword momentum missed, the folding fan in Dong Xiangyi's hand came over with an extremely sharp blood-colored gang qi. However, this time, Chu Xiu did not retreat. The heavenly demon dance in his hand drew a magnificent arc. The blood-refined divine aura contained pure demonic qi, which directly shattered Dong Xiangyi's gang qi. Dong Xiangyi slashed out with his long saber and waved the folding fan in his hand. Blood-colored gang qi turned into a hurricane cyclone and stopped in front of him. Although he was forced to retreat by Chu Xiu's attacks, he still managed to block Chu Xiu's attacks. However, at this time, Dong Xiangyi's expression was very ugly. One had to know that he was in the 5 Qi's origin realm, while Chu Xiu was in the 3-flower realm, which was 1 realm lower than him. In the end, he was the one being suppressed. How aggrieved was this? Right at this moment, a wave of killing intent came from behind Chu Xiu. Lu Tong's figure shot out explosively towards Chu Xiu like an arrow. His entire person and the sword in his hand seemed to have fused into one, making him extremely sharp and filled with boundless killing intent. Chu Xiu turned around and pinched a seal with his hand. The wisdom fist seal covered all directions, and heaven and earth were useless. In an instant, the stellar energy around Chu Xiu's body began to stagnate. LV Tong's extremely swift sword momentum and his sharp sword intent were consumed by the inescapable net laid out by the wisdom fist seal. The originally extremely swift attack now seemed to be in slow motion. Chu Xiu turned around and slashed with his sword. The Avicii Hell's Devil Chi roared out and directly blasted Lu Tong away. Fang Buhui, who was standing behind, frowned. Back in the God Weapon Conference, he was famous in the pugilistic world and ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu list. He truly deserved his reputation. He had underestimated Chu Xiu. As a three-flower realm martial artist in the Five Chi's origin realm, and 1 against 2, Chu Xiu was not at a disadvantage at all. Instead, he seemed to be at ease. This kind of strength could be said to be terrifying. Cheng Buhui said to Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingxing in a deep voice, "You two protect young Master Qiu." "I'll do it." As soon as he finished speaking, Cheng Buhui directly took out the heavy sword on his back. The sword fell to the ground, and everyone could feel the ground tremble. The lone cultivators present were secretly speechless. What was this heavy sword made of? It didn't look too exaggerated, so why was it so heavy? Cheng Buhui held the sword with both hands and directly slashed at Chu Xiu. Ordinary swords were used to stab, and their main purpose was to be sharp and agile. However, this heavy sword in Cheng Buhui's hands was like a large machete. It was extremely heavy. With just a simple move, splitting Huashan Mountain, there was no release of vigor qi. Instead, the plain and invisible vigor qi condensed on the body of his sword. It condensed and did not dissipate, as if it was real. As the sword fell, the surrounding air seemed to be compressed. With a heavy force, it made a violent sonic boom. Chu Xiu also felt the power of Cheng Buhui's sword. His figure moved, and his hand formed the inner binding seal. His figure quickly retreated, and in the blink of an eye, he was already outside the inn. When Cheng Buhui's sword fell to the ground, everyone in the inn suddenly felt as if they had experienced an earthquake. The sword directly cut a huge pit several meters wide in the ground. The cracks were densely packed, and they directly extended outside the inn. The front half of the inn's door directly shattered with a loud bang. At that moment, Chu Xiu's voice came from outside, "5 heroes of Jiangdong, are you determined to protect Qiu Dongmao? Don't worry, the show hasn't started yet. I hope you won't regret it in the future." Chapter 296. Cheng Buhui stood in the lobby of the inn, leaning on his heavy sword. His eyes were filled with seriousness. Chu Xiu's words were filled with a dense coldness that actually made him feel a chill even though it wasn't cold. However, the only good thing about the fight just now was that they were sure that Chu Xiu was the only one who came after them. In that situation, Chu Xiu could easily deal with the two of them. If he had brought the other martial artists from the Guanzhong torture room or the people from Eastern Qi, the 5 of them would not have been able to stop him. Looking at the destroyed inn, Cheng Buhui put his hand into his pocket, but his face was filled with embarrassment. Qiu Dongmao was very perceptive. Seeing this, he immediately took out a banknote and stuffed it into the innkeeper's hand. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm really sorry for damaging your inn. Take this as a reward." The innkeeper looked at the amount on the banknote and nodded with a smile. "It's enough. Thank you, young master." The banknote that Qiu Dongmao took out was enough to buy his inn, let alone compensate for his loss. The rest of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes had a better impression of Qiu Dongmao when they saw this. In fact, the Jiangdong's 5 heroes were living a rather shabby life. After all, they were all rogue cultivators, and they were motivated to be chivalrous and help the needy. Basically, they did not have much income. Most of their income came from killing some villains or robbers, or exterminating some bandits and the like, and robbing some things from them. However, they had to keep the cultivation resources that they had robbed for themselves. After all, they were also martial artists, and they needed a lot of resources to increase their cultivation speed. However, some of the gold, silver, and other treasures were exchanged for money and given to the poor. It could be considered as robbing the rich to help the poor, so they lived a very simple life. Cheng Buhui coughed and said, "Chu Xiu is alone now, but I can't guarantee that there's someone behind him. To avoid any trouble, let's leave now." The others nodded and immediately turned around to leave. The other rogue cultivators in the inn looked at each other. Chu Xiu, who was ranked 6th on the Longhu leaderboard, was going against the 5 heroes of River East. This was a big deal. If they sold this news to the wind-sweeping tower, they might be able to make a small profit. Of course, no one cared about Qiu Dongmao, who was the main target. In front of Chu Xiu and the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, Qiu Dongmao was just a supporting character. After fleeing through the night, another day passed. Cheng Buhui and the others were able to hold on, but after midnight, Qiu Dongmao was already exhausted. Even though the others were carrying Qiu Dongmao on their backs, he was unable to hold on. Therefore, after nightfall, Cheng Buhui did not sense any trace of Chu Xiu. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Let's take a break and eat something." Hearing Cheng Buhui's words, the others also found a big tree and rested behind it. They lit a bonfire and roasted their rations. At this time, they were not afraid of being discovered by Chu Xiu, because they did not hide their traces along the way. Anyway, Chu Xiu's strength was obvious, and he was only one person. They only needed to protect Qiu Dongmao from being killed. Next to the bonfire, Wu Tiandong finished roasting a pancake and handed it to Lu Qingqing. "Fifth sister, come, eat something." The others also knew that Wu Tiandong admired Lu Qingqing, but no one said anything. They were used to it anyway. Lu Qingqing took the pancake and smiled. "Thank you, fourth brother." Although she was a woman, she had already adapted to this kind of wandering life after following others around for so many years. Therefore, she did not mind it and directly picked up the pancake to eat. Wu Tiandong leaned against Lu Qingqing and said, "Fifth sister, after eating, rest for a while. With the 5 of us here, Chu Xiu will not dare to make a move." Lu Qingqing shook her head. "No need, I am not that delicate." Just at this time, Lu Qingqing suddenly lowered her voice and transmitted her voice, "Fourth brother, since Qiu Dongmao said that he is on the Crown Prince's side, then when we go to Glazed Ink City this time, will we also join the Crown Prince?" Wu Tiandong said in surprise, "Fifth sister, why do you think so?" Lu Qingqing looked at the sky and said in a downcast tone, "We have been sworn brothers for so many years and have also roamed the Jianghu for so many years. We can be considered to have some fame. However, fame is fame, and we are still considered young. But what about 10 years later, 20 years later? Are we going to continue like this? Sometimes, we women think more than you men do." Wu Tiandong hesitated. "I have not really thought about this, but I will listen to Big Brother. Whatever Big Brother wants me to do, I will do it." Wu Tiandong was a little rash and impulsive, so most of the time he would only listen to Cheng Buhui. Anyway, in his opinion, what Big Brother said must be right. As long as he listened to Big Brother, then he would not be wrong. It was that simple. Lu Qingqing forced a smile. Wu Tiandong did not realize that in fact, no matter what kind of woman they would not like an impulsive and brainless man who did not have any opinions of his own. Cheng Buhui and the others did not pay attention to the secret transmission between the two of them. Anyway, everyone knew about Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing, so they thought that he was whispering sweet nothings to Lu Qingqing. However, Cheng Buhui and the others did not know that Chu Xiu's figure was on a big tree 100 feet away from them. His black clothes were hidden in the night, and his eyes shone with a deep and cold light. It was indeed very troublesome for him to deal with the 5 heroes of Jiangdong alone. When they fought in the inn before, he had already come up with a countermeasure. If he fought with all his strength, it would not be a problem for him to kill the second brother, Dong Xiangyi, and the third brother, Lu Tong. However, if Cheng Buhui joined in, Chu Xiu would almost certainly lose. Cheng Buhui's strength was probably only one step away from the oneness of heaven and man state. If he fought Cheng Buhui one-on-one, Chu Xiu was not sure that he could win. Although Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing's strength was not great, they were not wooden blocks. If they secretly attacked from the side, they would still be able to cause a lot of damage to Chu Xiu. Therefore, Chu Xiu had never considered fighting them head-on, and he did not plan to find someone to help him. With Chu Xiu's connections in Eastern Qi, he could find Mo Tianlin. However, this time, he mainly came for Qiu Zhensheng's cultivation method. He had no intention of sharing it with anyone else. Since they could not be defeated from the outside, he would let them rot from the inside. The identities and secrets of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong were very interesting. In the original plot, it would be a very exciting drama. Now, Chu Xiu did not mind letting the drama play out earlier. After eating the cake, Lu Qingqing stood up and said, "I'm going to relieve myself." Cheng Buhui said, "Be careful. Don't go too far. Let fourth brother go with you." Wu Tiandong immediately stood up and said, "Leave it to me." He had fought with Chu Xiu before. Although he knew that he was no match for Chu Xiu would not be able to kill him in a second. He was not that useless. Cheng Buhui nodded and did not care. The 5 of them were here. As long as Lu Qingqing did not go too far, they would be able to help in time if Chu Xiu attacked. No matter how strong Chu Xiu was, he was not strong enough to kill them in a second. Lu Qingqing also knew the severity of the situation. She did not know where Chu Xiu was now, so she naturally would not go too far. They were all from Jianghu, not a noble family, so there was no need to be so particular. Therefore, Lu Qingqing only walked about 60 meters away. However, when she saw that Wu Tiandong was still following her, Lu Qingqing could not help but say, "Why are you still following me? Do you want to take a look?" Wu Tiandong's face turned red. He scratched his head and said, "I'll go somewhere further and help you guard it." As he spoke, Wu Tiandong moved another 30 meters away and stood under a tree with his back facing Lu Qingqing. However, at this moment, a low, mocking voice suddenly sounded. "TSK, it seems that you really think of Lu Qingqing as a goddess. You can't even bear to blaspheme her. However, you should know that there are many people who have visited her place, and they are all your acquaintances." Chu Xiu. Wu Tiandong was instantly shocked. His hand subconsciously grasped his autumn moon blade and he wanted to shout. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu did not attack. He only made a shushing gesture and said indifferently, "Don't make a sound. I did not want to attack. Otherwise, would have attacked long ago. Don't you want to hear some secrets about your 5th sister?" Wu Tiandong's hand gradually loosened, and he swallowed the words that he was about to shout. At this moment, Chu Xiu restrained his aura and even crossed his arms in front of his chest. He indeed had no intention of attacking. Otherwise, with Chu Xiu's strength, he would be at a disadvantage even if he was not seriously injured by a sneak attack. Thinking of what Chu Xiu had said just now, Wu Tiandong frowned and said in a low voice, "What did you mean just now?" Chu Xiu smiled. "What did I mean? You really are very simple. Don't tell me that after so many years in the martial world, you are still a virgin. Are you really going to preserve your yang energy and cultivate the virgin technique?" Wu Tiandong's face showed a trace of embarrassment and anger. He said angrily, "Chu Xiu. What do you mean?" Chu Xiu spread out his hands. "Don't mind me, I was just joking just now. But what if I said that the 5th sister you have always admired, the goddess in your heart, the existence that even you can't bear to blaspheme, has an affair with all three of your sworn brothers. What would you do? Wu Tiandong's eyes widened when he heard this. He directly grasped his autumn moon blade and shouted angrily in a low voice, "Nonsense." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Don't get agitated. Listen to me carefully. If you attract others, you won't be able to hear the rest of the exciting content." Chapter 297. Wu Tiandong held his saber with both hands and stared at Chu Xiu. He didn't believe what Chu Xiu had said at all. The 5 siblings had become sworn siblings, and everyone had taken good care of Lu Qingqing. That was true, but it was the kind of care an older brother would give to his younger sister. It definitely didn't include any romantic feelings. Moreover, after so many years, how could he not know his siblings as well as an outsider like Chu Xiu? Wu Tiandong said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you can't beat us in a head-on fight, so you want to use this kind of conspiracy to sow discord between us. Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I'll believe what you say?" Chu Xiu said slowly, "Although the 5 of you have become sworn siblings, you've known each other at different times. 10 years ago, there was no such thing as the Jiangdong 5 heroes. At that time, only Cheng Buhui, Lu Tong, and Lu Qingqing knew each other. Lu Qingqing came from a small family and was weak. She was almost used as a marriage tool to marry a cripple. It was Cheng Buhui who saved her. Beauties love heroes. Cheng Buhui was a hero in front of Lu Qingqing, and he appeared when she was at her most desperate. What do you think she would think? Therefore, Lu Qingqing had taken the initiative to pursue Cheng Buji since then. However, she was rejected by Cheng Buji because he had great ambitions and did not want to be tied down by love. But the goddess in your heart is very bold. When Cheng Buhui rejected her, she took the initiative to climb into his bed. Cheng Buhui is also a normal man. What do you think he would do? Chu Xiu looked at Wu Tiandong with a strange smile, but Wu Tiandong gritted his teeth and said, "You're talking nonsense." Chu Xiu said lightly, "You can ask Lu Tong if I'm talking nonsense. He's one of the people who knows about this." However, Cheng Buhui really had a heart of stone. She had already given her body to him, but he did not relent. Instead, he acknowledged Lu Qingqing as his sister. This was not a bad idea. Right, speaking of LV Tong, this person was very innocent. He really did not have any feelings for Lu Qingqing, but 7 years ago, Cheng Buhui and the other 2 had joined forces to capture the rapist thousand-faced jade fox Song Sangchong. In the end, the 3 of them had been separated. Although LV Tong had killed Song Sangchong, he had been poisoned by the other party, and if he did not vent it, his meridians would be damaged. That 5th sister of yours is really loyal. She only needed to carry the other party for 2 hours to reach the brothel in the prefecture mansion, but she insisted on doing it herself. TSK, she's really loyal. Haven't you noticed that even though Lu Tong is your sworn brother, he treats everyone coldly except Lu Qingqing? It's not because she's the youngest among you. Wu Tiandong's face was livid. He did not know what happened 7 years ago because he did not know Cheng Buhui and the others at that time. In the past, Wu Tiandong did not find anything wrong, but now listening to Chu Xiu's words and the details of their previous interactions, he could not help but have some doubts. Chu Xiu continued, "As for the last one, Dong Xiangyi, he is much simpler. Do you think he is a rogue cultivator? In fact, your second brother is a genuine descendant of an aristocratic family. He is elegant and well-versed in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. His strength is second only to Cheng Buhui. Isn't such a man attractive enough to women? It's a pity that your second brother has been through thousands of flowers, but not a single leaf has landed on him. There are countless women who have slept with him, but none of them have truly become his one and only woman. Didn't you notice that when you first met these people, Lu Qingqing's attitude towards your second brother was a little different from the others?" After saying all this, Chu Xiu also felt that Lu Qingqing was a strange woman. It was not wrong to say that she was a fickle woman. She just chose what most women would do, which was to choose a sufficiently outstanding and strong person to be her partner. Cheng Buhui was outstanding and strong enough, but unfortunately, his heart could not contain any woman. Dong Xiangyi's character meant that the women who could catch his eye were often more outstanding than him. Lu Qingqing could not do it, so she could only be his younger sister. As for Lu Tong's incident, the original plot did not explain clearly what had happened, but there was a high probability that it was an accident. Lu Qingqing had only just begun to roam the world at that time, and it was very likely that she was so anxious that she forgot about other methods. Of course, this was something Chu Xiu would not say. Lu Qingqing's incident was normal in other places, but the mistake was that she had slept with the other members of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes. According to the normal development of the plot, Lu Qingqing would eventually agree to Wu Tiandong's passionate pursuit, and that would be the beginning of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes breakup. Lu Qingqing was just a prelude. The Jiangdong's 5 heroes were a group that had been praised by the people of Eastern Qi for so many years. Outsiders could not imagine how many secrets and cracks there were between them. In the original plot, Lu Qingqing was only the fuse that ignited this incident, but now, Chu Xiu had ignited it in advance. Nonsense. What you're saying is all nonsense. How could an outsider like you know these things? Wu Tiandong said through gritted teeth. Chu Xiu said lightly, if you don't want people to know, then don't do it. You guys, the Jiangdong's 5 heroes, have quite a reputation in Eastern Qi, and there are many people who pay attention to you. Jiang Wenyuan had wanted to recruit you previously, so he purposely gathered some information about you. You should know that I killed Jiang Wenyuan. As for these things, I found them when I was searching Prince Enli's mansion. Anyway, Jiang Wenyuan was dead now, and the entire Prince Anil residence had been emptied. Who knew what Chu Xiu had found in the Prince Anil residence? Looking at Wu Tiandong's livid expression, Chu Xiu said slowly, actually, you're right about one thing. I came here to tell you all this to provoke you guys. But think about it carefully, if you guys were really close, I wouldn't be able to provoke you guys. Anyway, I've said what I wanted to say. Whether you want to tell this to the others or not, it's up to you. With that, Chu Xiu retreated and disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind a gloomy Wu Tiandong. At this time, Lu Qingqing had finished peeing, but when she walked over, she saw that Wu Tiandong's expression was a little off. She couldn't help but ask, "Fourth brother, did something happen?" Wu Tiandong forced a smile and said, "It's nothing, let's go back." Lu Qingqing didn't mind and followed Wu Tiandong back. But at this time, Wu Tiandong was feeling more and more uncomfortable, and the way he looked at Cheng Buhui and the others was also a little unnatural. When he thought about how the woman he liked had slept with his best brothers, he felt as uncomfortable as if he had swallowed a fly. It was said that brothers were like hands and feet, and women were like clothes, but Wu Tiandong had not reached this level yet. Although he kept saying in his heart that all of this could be fake and that Chu Xiu had said it on purpose to sow discord between the brothers, he could not convince himself. In the end, Wu Tiandong even wanted to open his mouth and ask Cheng Buhui what was going on, but he didn't have the courage to ask this question. Because he was afraid that if he asked this question, he would really break off relations with his elder brother and the others. Just like that, he spent the whole night with these thoughts in his mind, and the next day, Cheng Buhui and the others set off again. Chu Xiu followed far behind Cheng Buhui and the others, but before they went to rest, Chu Xiu walked in front of them and left a few marks on their path. When night fell, Dong Xiangyi's expression changed when he saw the marks, but he didn't make a sound. Instead, he stood up and walked in the direction of the marks. When Cheng Buhui saw Dong Xiangyi leave, he thought that he was looking for a place to pee. Out of habit, Cheng Buhui reminded him, "Second brother, be careful. Don't let Chu Xiu sneak attack you." Dong Xiangyi nodded and said, "Don't worry, big brother. Although I can't defeat Chu Xiu, he can't sneak attack me in this situation." Although he said this casually, Dong Xiangyi's expression was slightly solemn. Looking at the hidden marks on the tree, Dong Xiangyi walked in one direction for hundreds of feet before the marks disappeared. He shouted in a low voice, "Chu Xiu, why did you use the Dong family to lure me out? Do you want to take them down one by one? Don't even think about it. If you dare to make a move, Big Brother and the others will come immediately, and don't think that you can kill me in a short time." Chu Xiu jumped down from the tree and said lightly, "I didn't lure you out, but there's something in your heart that you can't let go of. The people of Jianghu all think that you're a lone cultivator, but they don't know that you, a seemingly miserable lone cultivator, are actually a disciple of the Jialing Dong family of West Chu, one of the 9 great families. The Dong family has a longer history than the royal family of West Chu. It has been around for thousands of years, and its bloodline is noble. How can those lone cultivators be compared to it?" Dong Xiangyi was very calm. He snorted and said, "So what? I'm a member of the Dong family, but that was many years ago. I have nothing to do with the Dong family now, and I've let go of everything in the past. Now I'm just Dong Xiangyi of the 5 heroes of River East, not a member of the Jialing Dong family. Besides, is it shameful to be from the Dong family?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Of course it's not shameful, but you're lying now. There are some things that you can't let go of, and you don't want to let go. Otherwise, when you discovered the mark I left behind, you could have told Chengbuhui about it instead of coming to see me in secret. It turns out that you still care about your background. As a disciple of the Dong family of Jialing, you're now one of the 5 heroes of River East, but I feel that your purpose doesn't seem to exist. Chengbuhui and the others are motivated to be chivalrous and help the needy. As a young master from the Dong family of Jialing, how can you have such a hobby? I'm afraid that's not all you want, right?" Chapter 298. Chu Xiu's words made Dong Xiangyi's face darken. He said coldly, "What do you mean?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "What I mean is very clear. Dong Xiangyi, your purpose is not pure. Among the 5 heroes of River East, the others may be worthy of the word hero, but you don't deserve it. Chengbuhui's chivalry was to fulfill his life's wish, but you, on the other hand, are very utilitarian. You, Dong Xiangyi, were born in the Jialing Dong family, and you were even a direct descendant. But because you fought with the young talents of the previous generation of the Dong family for the position of the heir, you were framed and punished by the family. You were so angry that you directly left the Dong family and wanted to make a name for yourself in the outside world. Then, you returned to the Dong family above board and told the people of the Dong family that they had made the wrong choice. At this time, you met Chengbuhui and became sworn brothers with them. You made such a great reputation for chivalry in the Jianghu. Don't you want to use this reputation to do something? Chengbuhui and the others were all born in the wilderness, so they understand the sadness of the people at the bottom of the Jianghu. But you are a son of an aristocratic family. Why do you have so many emotions?" Chu Xiu's words made Dong Xiangyi feel cold all over. He felt as if he had been seen through. In fact, his identity was not a big secret, and he didn't want to hide it. However, Chu Xiu had openly said what he had been thinking about all this time. This made Dong Xiangyi feel horrified. He had never told anyone about these things, so how did Chu Xiu know? Dong Xiangyi took a deep breath and said, "Then what do you mean now? Do you want to tell my big brother all these things and sow discord between us? But I'm afraid you've got the wrong idea. We have been friends for many years. Even if you say this to others, it will be useless. I want to see if they will believe you, an enemy with ulterior motives, or me." Chu Xiu shook his head. "No, you're wrong. I'm not trying to provoke Chengbuji and the rest, but you. Dong Xiangyi, you want to make a name for yourself in Jianghu with the help of the 5 swordsmen of Jiangdong, turning them into the 5 swordsmen of Eastern Qi, or even a hero praised by the whole Jianghu like Chu Kuanga, with supreme glory and fame. At that time, you would be able to openly return to the Dong clan, and you might even be invited back to the Dong clan in person. Unfortunately, you didn't realize that your calculations were wrong. The 5 heroes of Jiangdong are a group. When outsiders mention you, they will only say that you are the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Specifically, that person is Cheng Buji, the boss of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, not you, Dong Xianxia. Think about it, all the people and incidents that you've encountered along the way were led by Cheng Buhui. He's the founder of the River East's 5 heroes and the most famous one among them. In the end, the world only knows him as Cheng Buhui, and no matter how strong you are, you're just one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. You're just a foil, no different from the other 3. Chu Xiu's words were like a sharp knife. Every sentence stabbed into his heart, forcing him to face up to these things. However, he sadly found that everything Chu Xiu said was true. People in Jianghu only knew the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, and they only knew Cheng Buhui. If he reported his name outside, and Cheng Buhui said that he was Cheng Buhui, the other party would suddenly understand and say, "Oh, it's Master Cheng, one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong." However, if Dong Xianxia reported his name outside, the other party would be confused. If he mentioned the 5 heroes of Jiangdong again, the other party would suddenly realize that he was one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Yes, he was just one of them. The 5 heroes of Jiangdong belonged to Cheng Buhui, and Cheng Buhui represented the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. As for Dong Xianxia, he could only be one of them, because only one representative was needed. There was no need for a second one. Chu Xiu said slowly, "Dong Xianxia, I heard that when you became sworn brothers, you learned the righteous manner? Have you ever thought that the 5 people of the righteous manner were indeed famous in Jianghu when they became sworn brothers? It's also a story that has been passed down for decades. But think about it carefully. What were the names of the other 4 people in the righteous manner? You can't figure it out, right? I believe that you're not the only one who doesn't know. 99% of the people in Jianghu don't know. They only remember one person, and that is the master of the righteous manner, the universe-flipping hand, Nie Renlong. No matter how many people gather, only those who walk to the end can become famous in Jianghu. The so-called reputation can only be effective on one person. As long as Cheng Buhui is here, you'll never be able to stand out in this life." After saying that, Chu Xiu turned around and left, leaving Dong Xianxia standing there with a gloomy expression. He was extremely conflicted. He knew that everything Chu Xiu said was to sow discord. He wanted to make the 5 of them hate each other and make them fight among themselves. Since he couldn't defeat them head-on, he had to play these tricks secretly. But the problem was that a fly never bites a seamless egg. Since there was a loophole in his plan, he couldn't blame Chu Xiu for targeting him. Dong Xianxia knew all this. He wanted to be more open-minded, but Chu Xiu's last sentence lingered in his ears from time to time. As long as Cheng Buhui is here, you'll never be able to stand out in this life. He returned to the campsite in a daze. Cheng Buhui saw that his face was a little pale. He couldn't help but ask, "Second brother, what's wrong with you?" Dong Xianxia shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I'm fine. I just feel a little uncomfortable because I haven't taken a bath for such a long time." Cheng Buhui shook his head helplessly and said, "As a son of an aristocratic family, you should change your ordinary habits. We don't have to be so pretentious in Jianghu." Cheng Buhui didn't know Dong Xianxia's real identity, but he also guessed that Dong Xianxia was from an aristocratic family. This could be seen from Dong Xianxia's behavior. However, Cheng Buhui didn't care. Since they had become sworn brothers, they were all brothers. It didn't matter where they came from. Anyway, as long as everyone had chivalry in their hearts, it was fine. However, Cheng Buhui didn't notice that 2 people didn't sleep well that night. One was Wu Tiandong, and the other was Dong Xianxia. The next morning, LV Tong got up early to fetch water from the stream. Cheng Buhui and the others didn't worry. LV Tong's sword was the fastest among the 5 of them, and his movement technique was also the fastest. Therefore, even if he couldn't defeat Chu Xiu, he wasn't afraid of Chu Xiu's sneak attack. Carrying the water bag to the stream, LV Tong fetched water expressionlessly. However, at this moment, the water bag in his hand suddenly paused. His aura, which was originally restrained, was instantly filled with murderous intent. This was because he saw a person in the reflection of the water. A person wearing black clothes, a black iron bamboo hat, and a simple black iron mask was standing on a tree and looking at him. LV Tong was very familiar with this outfit because he used to wear it for more than 10 years. In his countless nightmares, there was a person wearing a black iron bamboo hat and a black iron mask, looking at him with hollow eyes and wanting to take him back to the place he didn't want to go back to in this life. Don't get too excited. Speaking of which, you and I are in the same boat. We're both killers who betrayed the Blue Dragon Society. Don't show your weapons when we meet. Let's catch up, okay? Chu Xiu put away his bamboo hat and mask and looked at LV Tong with a warm smile. Each of the 5 heroes of the River East had a different identity. LV Tong's origin was actually the most interesting because he was also a killer of the Blue Dragon Society. Furthermore, he wasn't like the Ghostly Hand King and the others, who had followed the normal procedure and paid the price before leaving the Azure Dragon Society. Like Chu Xiu, he had betrayed the Azure Dragon Society. However, he wasn't strong when he betrayed the society, so he wasn't hunted down on a large scale. Only one branch was hunting him down. Moreover, the people of the Blue Dragon Society didn't expect that a killer whose hands were stained with blood would actually become the 5 heroes of the River East. Therefore, after so many years, the people of the Blue Dragon Society didn't discover LV Tong. LV Tong said expressionlessly, "You want to reveal my identity to the Blue Dragon Society and use this to threaten me? You're thinking too much. All these years, I've made countless preparations to deal with the people of the Blue Dragon Society. I'm already very lucky to be able to live until now. If you want to go, then go. When the time comes, I'll take the initiative to leave and not cause trouble for Big Brother and the others. Don't even think about using this to threaten me." Chu Xiu looked at LV Tong with a faint smile. In fact, among the 5 of the 5 heroes of the River East, LV Tong could be said to be the one with the least loopholes. He was from the Blue Dragon Society, and an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society wasn't afraid of death. Even if Chu Xiu threatened him with death, it would be useless. Moreover, LV Tong was saved by Cheng Buhui. When he was on the verge of death when he was chased by the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society, it was Cheng Buhui who saved him and didn't ask about his background. However, ever since that time, LV Tong followed Cheng Buhui and listened to everything he said. It could be said that he was loyal to the point that he would really give up his life for him. An assassin from the Blue Dragon Society didn't know what chivalry meant. Even now, LV Tong didn't understand why Cheng Buhui would disregard his own interests to help others in this world where the strong preyed on the weak. However, this wasn't important because Cheng Buhui told him that as a martial artist, he should be chivalrous. So, he would be chivalrous. As a martial artist, he had to punish evil. Then, he would use the sword that he used to kill for his own interests to aim at those villains. LV Tong didn't understand chivalry and didn't want to do it. Everything he did was for Cheng Buhui. Therefore, he was a person that couldn't be provoked. He didn't even care about the time he had with Lu Qingqing. He didn't feel guilty towards Wu Tiandong because he only cared about Cheng Buhui's feelings. However, people with a perfect mental state didn't exist. Perhaps they existed, but they were probably gods or saints. LV Tong wasn't a saint. He wasn't afraid of death and didn't care about anything. However, Cheng Buhui was a loophole in his mental state. Chapter 299. Chu Xiu looked at LV Tong and shook his head. I'm not threatening you. I'm a traitor of the Blue Dragon Society. If I go to the Blue Dragon Society and expose you, wouldn't I be looking for trouble? I just want to tell you a secret. A secret that you've done before, a secret that even you don't know about. A secret about your brother, Cheng Buhui. LV Tong didn't want to talk nonsense with Chu Xiu. His hand was already on his sword. However, when he heard that this matter was related to his brother, LV Tong unconsciously let go of his sword. He said coldly, "Don't try to be mysterious." "What are you trying to say?" Chu Xiu said slowly, "I'm also an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society. I know what an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society is like. Apart from killing people, it's all about cultivation. It's like a knife without any emotions. You've been a member of the Azure Dragon Society longer than I have. Perhaps you've killed more people than you can count. But do you know that one of the people you've killed was the father of your brother?" LV Tong couldn't help but tremble. He said in a low voice, "Nonsense. I was only at the inner aura stage when I betrayed the Blue Dragon Society. How could I kill my brother's father?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "It's true that Cheng Buhui is very strong, but who says that a father has to be stronger than his son? All these years, have you ever heard Cheng Buhui talk about his background? Not even once, right? Because this is something that hurts him. Cheng Buhui was born in the Songyang Prefecture of Eastern Qi's Songyang Prefecture's Hegemon Sword Villa. Although the name sounds domineering, it's actually just a small villa with a few dozen people. The villa master, Cheng Nanhai, is only at the inner aura stage. When you received the mission to kill Cheng Nanhai, Cheng Buhui was roaming the world. He was Cheng Nanhai's only son, and he was also the most talented disciple in the Hegemon Sword Villa over the years. Cheng Nanhai couldn't bear to let him waste his life in the Hegemon Sword Villa, so he let him roam the world. In the end, by the time Cheng Buhui returned to the Hegemon Sword Villa, you and the other assassins had already exterminated the Hegemon Sword Villa. It was because of this that Cheng Buji was motivated to uphold justice and eliminate injustice in the world. TSK, now that I thought about it, I was starting to admire Cheng Buji. If it was anyone else who encountered such a situation, they would have fallen into a demon's dark side. If they were lucky, they would have walked the path of revenge. In the end, Cheng Buhui didn't want others to follow in his footsteps. Instead, he became a chivalrous person. His state of mind was truly admirable. However, the problem was that Cheng Buhui didn't know who killed his entire family. He didn't have the ability to find that person. Now that the enemy was right in front of him, what do you think Cheng Buhui would do if he found out about this? You were the one who personally killed Cheng Nanhai when the Hegemon Sword Villa was destroyed. Do you think Cheng Buhui would let you go out of consideration for his brotherhood and cut all ties with you? Or would he kill you? A ridiculing smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. His figure faded away, leaving behind an expressionless LV Tong, who was standing there expressionlessly, but his heart was in turmoil. The hardest thing to understand in this world was the human heart, and the easiest thing to use was also the human heart. It was extremely easy to kill with a knife, but killing with one's heart was even crueler, even though there wouldn't be blood. The Jiangdong's 5 heroes actually didn't have much enmity with Chu Xiu, but it was a pity that they were stubborn and blocked Chu Xiu's path. Hence, Chu Xiu had no choice but to use all means to get rid of them. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame Qiu Dongmao. If Qiu Dongmao hadn't used the 5 of them, they wouldn't be standing on the opposite side now. However, Chu Xiu's personality had always been like this. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he did, he would do it to the extreme. Although the Jiangdong's 5 heroes were a group, each of them had their own thoughts and mental flaws. Chu Xiu had already planted flaws in the hearts of 3 of them, and he was only missing one person. However, this person wasn't Cheng Buhui, but Lu Qingqing. In fact, Chu Xiu really admired Cheng Buhui. He was a true chivalrous person. His family was destroyed, but he didn't lose his sight because of hatred. Instead, he chose to devote himself to Jianghu to serve justice and fulfill his lifelong wish. It could be said that among the 5 of them, only he could be called a true chivalrous person. Dong Xiangyi's chivalrous actions were full of utilitarianism, but LV Tong didn't have any chivalrous intentions in his heart. He just wanted to repay a debt of gratitude. If Cheng Buhui asked him to be chivalrous, he would do it. If Cheng Buhui asked him to become a demon and kill people, he would do the same. As for Wu Tiandong, he was impulsive and childish. He became sworn brothers with Cheng Buhui and the others because he yearned for the so-called chivalrous Jianghu. If he had encountered bandits in the early days, he might have also become a ruthless killer. As for Lu Qingqing, she was just a woman. She didn't have great ambitions, but she was unwilling to submit to fate. Everything she did was just blindly following orders. Therefore, whether it was now or in the original plot, Cheng Buhui could be called a true chivalrous person. A true chivalrous person with no flaws in his mental state could be compared to Chu Kuanga. Unfortunately, if one wanted to be a true chivalrous person in Jianghu, chivalrous heart was actually secondary. Strength and power were the most important. Chu Kuanga was able to become a great chivalrous person. The biggest contribution was not his chivalrous heart, but his cultivation that could be regarded as the top among martial arts masters. He had the entire Guanzhong torture room as his backing. Obviously, Cheng Buhui did not have these, so his fate would be somewhat miserable. Even without Chu Xiu, it would still be the same. Hidden in the dense forest, Chu Xiu quietly waited for Lu Qingqing's arrival. Dong Xiangyi and the other 2 had seen Chu Xiu in secret, but none of them said anything about it. Therefore, from Lu Qingqing's point of view, Chu Xiu did not even chase after her, or he did not dare to chase after her. Therefore, she also boldly went to relieve herself. Of course, in the distance, she was accompanied by Wu Tiandong, who had a strange expression on his face. At this moment, Lu Qingqing suddenly felt some movement in front of her. She subconsciously tightened her grip on the long sword in her hand, but she heard a faint voice say, "Ms. Lu, calm down. If I wanted to sneak up on you, you wouldn't be standing now." Lu Qingqing said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you really dared to chase after me. However, you underestimate me. I am indeed no match for you, but we are both in the 3-flower realm, so I won't be killed by you in one move." Lu Qingqing's words were not just arrogant. Although she was a woman, her strength was not weak. She was originally from a small family and had some martial arts foundation. After meeting Cheng Buhui and the others, Cheng Buhui taught her many things about cultivation. Dong Xiangyi, who was from the Jialing Dong family, also taught her some things about the foundation of inner strength. Even LV Tong patiently taught her many killing techniques. She did not know if it was because she already had a relationship with all 3 of them. After wandering the martial world for so many years, Lu Qingqing had killed many people. At this time, facing Chu Xiu, she did not panic. She immediately prepared to attack and call for help. However, at this time, Chu Xiu said, "Ms. Lu, you don't have to be so sensitive. I have already said that I did not want to sneak up on you. This time, my target is only Qiu Dongmao. In fact, it is very funny. I have no grudge with you Jiangdong's 5 heroes, but in the end, you are opposing each other because of an outsider. Isn't this very ironic? I said that Qiu Dongmao poisoned Qiu Zhensheng, but you don't believe me. Let's not talk about this for now. The key is that you spent so much effort to escort Qiu Dongmao to Glazed Ink City. What are you after? Benefits? Then I can tell you, don't even think about it. Qiu Dongmao can't give you any benefits. The Crown Prince only values his identity as Qiu Zhensheng's illegitimate son and wants to use him to control the Pegasus farm. Now that Qiu Zhensheng is dead, even if the Pegasus farm chooses a new owner, it will not be Qiu Dongmao. Therefore, this person is actually already considered useless. It is already very good that he can guarantee a high position and wealth in his next life. Why do you have to work so hard? Lu Qingqing frowned, but in the end, she did not attack Chu Xiu. This was because Chu Xiu's words had indeed hit the nail on the head. After wandering the martial world with Cheng Buhui for so long, Lu Qingqing was still a little tired. After all, she was a woman and did not have as strong a conviction as a man like Cheng Buhui. From her behavior, it could be seen that Lu Qingqing wanted to marry a strong man, a man who could give her a sense of security so that she would not have to wander around. At first, this person was Cheng Buhui, but then it became Dong Xiangyi. Of course, LV Tong should be an exception. Now Wu Tiandong was pursuing her, but Wu Tiandong was not as good as Cheng Buhui and Dong Xiangyi in all aspects except for sincerely treating her well. Therefore, Lu Qingqing was a little resistant and had not yet agreed to Wu Tiandong's request. This time, when she escorted Qiu Dongmao, it really made her think that she could be recruited by the crown prince. However, she did not dare to tell others. Cheng Buhui hated being someone else's lackey. Even if this person was the crown prince, Dong Xiangyi did not want to submit to others. LV Tong, on the other hand, only followed Cheng Buhui. He would do whatever Cheng Buhui asked him to do. Therefore, Lu Qingqing told this matter to Wu Tiandong. Unfortunately, Wu Tiandong was a guy who did not have any far-reaching ideas. He only knew how to follow what others said. He had to listen to Cheng Buhui on this kind of matter. Looking at Lu Qingqing's expression, Chu Xiu knew that he was right. This was because Lu Qingqing was such a person in the original plot. In the end, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I'm trying to sow discord and recruit you. You can't rely on the crown prince, but I can introduce you to the second prince of Eastern Qi. Although this prince is not as prominent as the crown prince, he is more capable and famous than the crown prince. You don't have to be in a hurry to answer me now. I have no grudge against the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, so I will give you some time. This is also the last chance. I hope you can grasp it." After saying that, Chu Xiu immediately left. Lu Qingqing, who was still standing there, even forgot that she had to go to the bathroom. Her expression kept changing, and it was only when Wu Tiandong shouted at her that Lu Qingqing realized what she was going to do. Chapter 300. Cheng Buhui leaned against a tree and wiped the heavy sword in his hand. This heavy sword was an heirloom of the Hegemon sword villa and was called Light Mountain. It was also the only 5th transformation precious weapon in the Hegemon sword villa. When he went out to roam the Jianghu, his father gave this sword to him and asked him to roam the Jianghu with it. Later on, when Cheng Buhui exterminated a Jianghu villain, he found a piece of Xianyuan heavy iron. This thing had no other use other than being hard and heavy. A piece the size of a fingernail weighed a few kilograms. Cheng Buhui found a master refiner to integrate this piece of Xianyuan heavy iron into Light Mountain, turning it from a 5th transformation precious weapon to a 6th transformation precious weapon. This sword had accompanied him since he was young. Although the Hegemon sword villa was gone and his father had died, as long as Qing Yu was around, he felt that these people were still alive, watching him carry out chivalrous deeds, fulfilling the ideals and revenge that he had in the past. After wiping the sword in his hand, Cheng Buhui looked at the sky. Although the thick fog in the forest was a little thick, it was already slightly bright. He was just about to call for everyone to set off. After a few more days of walking, they would be able to reach Black Glazed City. However, looking at everyone's condition, Cheng Buhui frowned slightly. He was actually not a very meticulous person, but rather a little rough. However, being rough was not the same as being stupid. He could clearly feel that something was wrong with everyone during this period of time. Each of them seemed to be preoccupied and absent-minded. It was fine if others were like this, but his second brother, Dong Xiangyi, had always been very thoughtful and did not like to communicate with others. Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing were not always together, so it was possible for them to quarrel. However, LV Tong had always been cold and indifferent all these years. No matter what happened, he was always calm as if his heart was as still as water. He had not changed at all over the years. But now, LV Tong always showed a look of wanting to say something to him, as if he had something to ask him. However, LV Tong did not open his mouth every time. Cheng Buhui was considerate and asked back, but LV Tong always said that he was fine. This strange atmosphere made Cheng Buhui very uncomfortable. He tied the heavy sword behind him again and sighed. Recently, he had been feeling a little uneasy. He had seen Chu Xiu's behavior in the inn. He was definitely the kind of person who would not give up until he achieved his goal. However, several days had passed, and Chu Xiu still hadn't shown up. It was as if what he had said to them in the inn was just to save his face. This was very abnormal. Cheng Buhui had heard a little about Chu Xiu's character. After all, he was already in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, and had some fame in the northern Yan and eastern Qi regions. From the description on the Longhu leaderboard, it was not difficult to see that Chu Xiu was a resolute and decisive person. However, his negative side was that he had changed a lot. He was a ruthless and cruel person. When he was an assassin in the Blue Dragon Society, his hands were already stained with blood. Later on, when he joined the Guanzhong torture room, he also killed many people in the Guanzhong region. Moreover, during the God Weapon Conference, he killed without any scruples. Those who fell into his hands were either dead or crippled. Only Yan Tingting was safe and sound. However, that was also because the Jixia Martial Arts Academy's Grand Chancellor, Xiao Baiyu, had intervened and saved Yan Tingting's life. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for her to escape death. Cheng Buhui did not believe that such a person would leave after just one exchange of blows with them after saying those harsh words. Therefore, the more time passed, the more anxious he became. Cheng Buhui even hoped that Chu Xiu would sneak attack them along the way and try his best to kill Qiu Dongmao. That would be normal. After letting out a long sigh, Cheng Buhui cleared his mind. Recently, he seemed to be a little paranoid. After all, Chu Xiu was a member of the Guanzhong torture room. If he received news from the Guanzhong torture room halfway, he might have something urgent to deal with. Therefore, it was normal that he would not be able to kill them in time. Therefore, Cheng Buhui said, "Pack your things. We are leaving. We will reach Black Glaze City in a few days. When we get there, we will rest for a while. Second brother, you can also take a good bath." Cheng Buhui's joke did not make Dong Xiangyi laugh. He only twitched the corner of his mouth and forced himself to deal with it. Just as Cheng Buhui was about to say something, a black figure walked out from the fog and said in a mocking tone, "Great hero Cheng, I've said it before in the inn. This matter isn't over yet. The real show hasn't begun. Black Stain City, you won't be able to reach it in this lifetime." Seeing Chu Xiu's figure, Cheng Buji's expression changed. He pulled out the heavy sword on his back and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, it seems like you've run out of patience. You haven't fought a single time during this period of time, so you should know that you can't defeat the 5 of us by yourself. There's no point in forcing a battle. Stop." A strange expression appeared on Chu Xiu's face. He said, "The 5 of us? Hero Cheng, you treat them as brothers, but I'm afraid they do not want to be brothers with you. Are you curious why I did not fight all this time? Actually, I did. If you don't believe me, you can ask your brothers and sisters. Which one of them has not seen me before? Also, someone has promised to be my spy in the dark, because I can give him far more than you, the big brother. Do you believe me?" As soon as he said that, Cheng Buhui subconsciously turned his head to look at the other 4 people. Their expressions changed as well. Cheng Buhui's heart sank when he saw this. Is what Chu Xiu said true? Cheng Buhui asked in a low voice. Without waiting for a few people to speak, Chu Xiu smiled and said, everyone, you'd better not lie. Otherwise, I don't mind repeating what I've said to you all before to everyone again. I gave you a chance, and this is your last chance. Hand over Qiu Dongmao, and you will still be the 5 heroes of River East. Otherwise, you should know what awaits you. Don't forget, one of you already has my men. I may not be able to defeat 5 of you, but what about 2 of you? The person hiding in the dark is even more lethal than me. Chu Xiu's words caused the expressions of the 4 people present to change. They did not know what Chu Xiu had said to the others, but they knew that Chu Xiu had grasped their deepest secrets. Only God knew where Chu Xiu had found out about them. They all thought that they would not agree to be Chu Xiu's spy, but what about the others? Dong Xiangyi was utilitarian, so he thought that the others were also utilitarian. If Chu Xiu tempted them with benefits, would the others agree? Lv Tong felt guilty towards Cheng Buhui, so he thought that the others also had all kinds of dark secrets. If Chu Xiu used this as a threat, he would rather die than compromise. Did the others have the same thoughts? There was also Wu Tiandong. The others had relationships with Lu Qingqing, but they had hidden it from him. This had already made Wu Tiandong resentful, but he did not want to lose Lu Qingqing, so he had kept it to himself. Among them, Lu Qingqing had the most complicated feelings. Previously, Chu Xiu had tempted her with the second prince to make her think about it. In the end, before she had even thought about it, Chu Xiu said that someone had already agreed. Who was this person? So should she agree or not? The 4 people all had complicated and suspicious expressions on their faces, and did not speak. Seeing this scene, Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. The brothers and sisters who had been friends with him for several years, or even 10 years, had actually met with Chu Xiu behind his back and had a secret discussion. Moreover, one of them had even become a spy. This was something that Cheng Buhui did not dare to believe and was unwilling to believe. However, the expressions of these people indicated that Chu Xiu was not lying. Chu Xiu stretched out a finger and shook it. I've said it before, there's only one chance. Qiu Dongmao, are you going to hand it over or not? Qiu Dongmao hid behind the 5 people, and his expression was extremely terrified. He never thought that Chu Xiu would play such a trick and use so many tricks in secret to forcibly split the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Although they were all standing together now, it was inevitable that they would split up. Other than Cheng Buhui, the other 4 people were secretly guessing who had agreed to Chu Xiu's conditions and become his spy. Only Cheng Buhui did not suspect them. It was not that he really believed these 4 people, but he did not dare to suspect them. If he, the big brother, questioned the others, then the 5 heroes of Jiangdong would really be finished. Cheng Buhui closed his eyes and only opened them after a while. His eyes were shining with determination. Qiu Dongmao is my benefactor's son. Since we've agreed to send him to Glazed Ink City, we won't hand him over. Moreover, I don't believe that my sworn brother would betray me. The 5 heroes of Jiangdong have been one body since the day they became sworn brothers, and it's still the same now. Chu Xiu shook his head. I've given you a chance, but you didn't grasp it. Don't blame me for what happens next. As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic aura around Chu Xiu skyrocketed. The dense demonic aura on the heavenly demon dance condensed into a blurry silhouette of a demon god. As Chu Xiu slashed out with his saber, an extreme demonic aura exploded. However, within this demonic aura, there was a hint of divinity. The devil's saber of Avicii would fall forever. As soon as he made his move, Chu Xiu slashed out with the last strike of the 3 sabers of Avicii. It was a demonic saber that could be described as the ultimate judgment of purgatory. The pure demonic aura could even affect the opponent's mind. Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. Among them, he was the strongest and had the most experience in battle. He had even fought against experts in the oneness of heaven and man realm. However, Chu Xiu's saber still gave him a strong sense of pressure, causing his expression to change. Cheng Buhui held his light sword in his hand and raised it as if it was 1,000 caddies. The earth energy in his body was restrained, and when the sword fell, it suppressed the mountain and filled the sea. Chapter 301. The backlash from the 3 strokes of Avicii was too great. With Chu Xiu's current strength, he could basically use the first 2 strokes to his heart's content. However, the last stroke would still cause a considerable backlash. The powerful demonic saber collided with Cheng Buhui's heavy sword, and a shocking power instantly erupted. The earth energy fluctuations even made weaker martial artists like Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing shudder with fear. Under the collision, the ground beneath Chu Xiu and Cheng Buhui's feet was filled with holes and cracks from the impact of the earth energy, but neither of them retreated. Looking at Chu Xiu, Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. Chu Xiu's strength was far greater than he had imagined. His martial path focused on strength, and those of the same level who could withstand a blow from his heavy sword could be counted on one hand. However, not only had Chu Xiu managed to block it, but he could even rely on pure strength to clash head-on with him. This was already shocking enough. Moreover, looking at Chu Xiu's martial path, it was obvious that he did not rely on brute force. Cheng Buhui raised his heavy sword, and after a series of slashes, the powerful might made people shudder with fear. However, Chu Xiu relied on the strength of his 3 strokes of Avicii and the powerful explosive power of the fast and slow 9 words formula to temporarily fight evenly with Cheng Buhui. Dong Xiangyi and the others frowned and simultaneously attacked Chu Xiu. Fighting 5 against 1, although they managed to suppress Chu Xiu in an instant, the more they fought, the more they felt that something was wrong. Originally, the 5 of them had joined forces to roam the pugilistic world, and their tacit understanding between each other was very high. However, now their attacks were very awkward. Cheng Buhui had just sent Chu Xiu flying with his sword, and Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong, who were the most lethal, should have joined forces to receive Cheng Buhui's attack. However, the 2 of them had held back when they attacked, guarding against each other, and even using their mental power to guard against Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing behind them. Because of this, the rhythm of the 2 of them was not right. It was not even as good as when the 2 of them had attacked Chu Xiu in the inn. Now, the 2 of them had been caught by Chu Xiu, and he directly used the wisdom fist seal to seal the space. The devil blade of Avicii blasted out continuously, forcing the 2 of them to retreat. Originally, Cheng Buhui could be evenly matched with Chu Xiu in a one-on-one fight. However, now that the 5 of them had attacked together, they were forced into a corner by Chu Xiu. The reason was that suspicion and cracks had actually appeared among the 5 of them. To be precise, 4 of them did not trust each other. Cheng Buhui, on the other hand, had the courage to trust the others. He believed that his sworn brother would not secretly attack him, but the others did not have the courage to believe that there was no one who would seek refuge with Chu Xiu. After all, the things that Chu Xiu had said to them had already shaken their state of mind. Now that Chu Xiu had said these words, no one could be sure whether anyone had agreed to be a mole for Chu Xiu. Therefore, if someone really became a mole for Chu Xiu and betrayed them by launching a sneak attack while they were fighting fiercely, they would almost certainly die. No one was willing to gamble with their lives. Dong Xiangyi and the other 3 were the same. The 5 of them worked together to besiege Chu Xiu, but the more they fought, the more aggrieved they became. The more they fought, the more their hands and feet were tied. This made Cheng Buhui frown immediately. He shouted in a low voice, "The 4 of you, take young Master Qiu and escape first. I'll cover the rear." Dong Xiangyi and the other 3 looked at each other. They had no choice but to take Qiu Dongmao and leave. Chu Xiu forced Cheng Buhui to retreat with a sinister slash filled with demonic qi. He smiled and said, "Cheng Buhui, aren't you afraid that the mole I left among the 4 of them will attack and kill Qiu Dongmao?" Alone and with his sword, Cheng Buhui exploded with even more power than before. He even had a trace of an aura that was strong enough to fight against Chu Xiu head-on. Mole? I don't believe it. Among my sworn brothers, no one is a mole, and no one will betray our former beliefs. Cheng Buhui's tone was firm. He was not affected by Chu Xiu at all. The light sword in his hand was extremely steady. No matter how strong Chu Xiu's blade aura and demonic chi were, they could not break through his defense. Chu Xiu's face revealed a trace of mockery. Great hero Cheng, you're really magnanimous. You're right to believe them. Even in the hearts of the other four, only you, great hero Cheng, can be trusted unconditionally. Unfortunately, the four of them can't trust each other to the same degree as you. Cheng Buhui's expression changed. To him, he could trust the others, and the others could trust him. But what about the others? Even Cheng Buhui did not dare to guarantee this with 100% certainty. However, Cheng Buhui did not have the time to think so much. He held the light sword in his hand, pushed all the distracting thoughts to the back of his mind, and fought with Chu Xiu with all his might. Chu Xiu was not in a hurry. The best part was yet to come. The secrets and grudges of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong were enough to make them break up completely. At this time, there was no need for Chu Xiu to fight them head-on. He only needed to add fuel to the fire. On the other side, Dong Xiangyi and the others also left with Qiu Dongmao. However, after running for more than 10 miles, Lu Tong stopped and said, "You guys leave first. I'll go help Big Brother." To Lu Tong, the reputation of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong was not important. Even Qiu Dongmao was not important. Only Cheng Buhui was important. Although Cheng Buhui could actually fight evenly with Chu Xiu alone, Lu Tong was still worried about Cheng Buhui and wanted to go back to help him. However, at this time, Wu Tiandong frowned and said, "Third brother, Big Brother is completely capable of stopping Chu Xiu. Why are you going back? Do you have an ulterior motive?" Wu Tiandong's words were explosive. He almost said that Lu Tong was a mole, and that he was going back to kill him instead of helping Cheng Buhui. If it was in the past, Wu Tiandong would never say such a thing. However, when he thought about how Lu Tong had a relationship with Lu Qingqing, and that Lu Qingqing was the one who initiated it, Wu Tiandong felt as if he had eaten a fly. He could not help but feel a trace of disgust towards Lu Tong. Moreover, Lu Tong did not have a good relationship with the others. After all, in his heart, only Cheng Buhui was the most important. Even the so-called 5 heroes of Jiangdong were not important. Therefore, Lu Tong was cold most of the time. He did not speak much, and he was not very close to the others. Under normal circumstances, this kind of thing would not show. However, at this time, it was as if these things had been suppressed for a long time, and they suddenly erupted. Lu Tong, who was about to leave, turned around and looked straight at Wu Tiandong. He said coldly, "What do you mean? Are you saying that I'm a mole?" Wu Tiandong snorted coldly. "I didn't say that. You said it yourself." A murderous look appeared in Lu Tong's eyes. Cheng Buhui was his reverse scale. Other people could say anything about him, but they could never question his loyalty to Cheng Buhui. A blood-red blade appeared in Lu Tong's hand, and the blood-avoidant sword was already placed on Wu Tiandong's neck. He said coldly, "If you talk nonsense again, I'll kill you." Lu Qingqing hurriedly said, "Third brother. What are you doing? Put down the sword." Dong Xiangyi, who was standing aside, quickly said, "Third brother. Stop fooling around. This is not the time to fool around." Lu Tong said coldly, "I'm not fooling around. You should know what exactly is going on. What did Chu Xiu get on you that made you choose to be his mole? Dong Xiangyi, if it weren't for Big Brother, how could a down-and-out child like you have such a reputation now? But you're always provoking Big Brother's authority. If it weren't for your age, and Big Brother asked the 5 of us to become sworn brothers. Do you think you're qualified to be my second brother? Don't think that I don't know what you're scheming. You're the most likely person to be the mole." Dong Xiangyi's expression changed. He snorted coldly and said, "Third brother, are you crazy? Why are you biting me? If I were a mole, I would have taken action just now. How could I have joined forces with you to besiege Chu Xiu?" Lu Tong ignored him. Instead, he stared at Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing and said coldly, "And you too, if it weren't for Big Brother, one of you would just be a fledgling rogue cultivator in Jianghu, and the other would have been sacrificed to marry a good-for-nothing. Now you've betrayed Big Brother and are ungrateful. Even if Big Brother forgives you, my sword will not spare you." There was no fear on Wu Tiandong's face. Instead, he took a step forward and said coldly, "Kill me if you can. Now you're talking as if you're a good person. Why didn't you stand up and refute Chu Xiu's words just now? Do you dare to say that you've never done anything to disappoint Big Brother and everyone else?" Although Wu Tiandong didn't know what Chu Xiu had said to him, it seemed that everyone had their own secrets that they didn't want to reveal. Everyone was the same. How noble could Wu Tiandong be? What right did he have to criticize others? At the moment, the 4 of them had their own thoughts. It could be said that the brotherly relationship in the past had been completely torn apart. They were all full of contradictions and distrust. Moreover, Cheng Buhui was not here at the moment, so no one could suppress them at all. Qiu Dongmao, who was behind them, wanted to dissuade them, but unfortunately, he didn't say anything in the end. Qiu Dongmao was a man with good judgment. At the moment, the 5 heroes of River East were full of hostility. They had simply changed from brothers to enemies. What could he do? If he spoke rashly, it was very likely that even he would be implicated. Qiu Dongmao could also see that among the 5 heroes of River East, only Cheng Buhui really wanted to repay his kindness and send him to Black Glaze City. But now that Cheng Buhui was not here, it was better for him to keep a low profile for the time being. Chapter 302. Just as Dong Xiangyi and the other 3 were about to fight amongst themselves, Cheng Buhui was still fighting with Chu Xiu. However, the more he fought, the more shocked he became. In reality, the 2 of them had yet to go all out. Cheng Buhui only wanted to stop Chu Xiu so that the other 4 could escape. Meanwhile, Chu Xiu did not want to go all out either because there was no need for him to. There was already a rift between the Jiangdong's 5 heroes. What Chu Xiu needed to do now was to add fuel to the fire and make it burn even more intensely. There was no need for him to fight Cheng Buhui to the death. Therefore, when Chu Xiu fought with Cheng Buhui, rather than saying that he was fighting with Cheng Buhui, it would be more accurate to say that he was using this opportunity to train his own realm, allowing him to break through to the 5 Qis unifications. Realm did not equate to combat power. This was a publicly acknowledged fact in the underworld. Realm was easy to determine, but combat power was very complicated. It was related to the martial arts and techniques that one cultivated, or the external environment and one's entire being. Therefore, there was no way to distinguish them in detail. However, to most of the martial artists in the underworld, their combat power was not as good as their realm. Only a freak like Chu Xiu would always have a combat power that was above his realm at every stage. Therefore, he needed to polish his current realm and comprehend the next realm. On the other hand, Cheng Buhui's strength was almost at the peak of the 5 Qis collecting in spirit. He only needed an opportunity to achieve the integration of heaven and man. If Cheng Buhui had chosen to rely on a force earlier and obtained powerful resources, he might have been able to step into this realm a long time ago. The heavy sword in Cheng Buhui's hand slashed out consecutively. There was no aura released from the blade of the sword, but the inner force of this power crushed everything else. Even Chu Xiu's blood-refined divine shield was unable to resist this extreme power. Sensing that Dong Xiangyi and the rest had escaped far away, Cheng Buhui shouted. An extremely powerful wave erupted from the heavy sword in his hand. The power stacked together like a landslide and sent Chu Xiu flying. He then took the opportunity to escape and regroup with Dong Xiangyi and the rest. Dusting off the dust on his clothes, Chu Xiu looked at Cheng Buhui's back and said, "You're leaving now. The show has only just begun." After Cheng Buhui forced Chu Xiu to retreat, he followed Dong Xiangyi and the others. Cheng Buhui originally thought that they must have escaped far away, but who would have thought that he would see Dong Xiangyi and the others in a state of mutual hostility after walking for more than 10 miles. "What are you doing?" Cheng Buji couldn't help but shout. Dong Xiangyi snorted. "Big brother, third brother is crazy. Everyone looks like Chu Xiu's spy, but he refuses to say what he said to Chu Xiu." LV Tong closed his eyes and said in a low voice, "Big brother, I will never betray you, but we can't let the others live. They have other intentions." Chu Xiu's spy could be 1 or 3. Wu Tiandong snorted. "What makes you say that you won't betray Big Brother? If you have the ability, then say it on the spot. What exactly did Chu Xiu say to you to make you so afraid?" LV Tong clenched his teeth and did not speak. He would not betray Cheng Buhui, but he really did not dare to say what Chu Xiu told him. At this moment, Chu Xiu's voice came from behind. "I can testify to this. LV Tong did not betray Cheng Buhui, and he is not my spy. It's because he feels guilty towards you, great hero Cheng." LV Tong's eyes widened. He pointed his sword at Chu Xiu and shouted, "Shut up." The corners of Chu Xiu's mouth curled into a smile, but in LV Tong's eyes, that smile was extremely evil. "Great hero Cheng, the people who did the extermination of the Hegemon Sword Villa were from the Blue Dragon Society. As for the person who instigated the Blue Dragon Society, you have not been able to find out. However, the person who killed your father is right in front of you. Your third brother is an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society. The person who beheaded your father, Cheng Nanhai, was LV Tong." As soon as he said that, everyone present was stunned. This news was really explosive, so much so that no one present could react. The person who had been a brother for 10 years actually became the person who killed his father in the blink of an eye. This change stunned Cheng Buhui, and his eyes revealed a look of disbelief. Is what Chu Xiu said true? Cheng Buhui looked at LV Tong and asked in a hoarse voice. LV Tong's eyes revealed a look of pain. He wanted to deny it, but in the end, he still nodded. At this moment, Wu Tiandong suddenly said, "Just now, you said that we were all spies, but in the end, you became the murderer who killed Big Brother's father. Do you still want to kill Big Brother now?" "Shut up!" LV Tong shouted, and there was a trace of killing intent in his eyes as he looked at Wu Tiandong. Chu Xiu clapped his hands and said, "Don't mind him. It's normal for your fourth brother to be angry. He pursued a woman for so many years, but in the end, she had an affair with all of you. Everyone in the Jiangdong 5 heroes knows about this, except for him. When did any of you ever treat him as a brother? It's normal for him to harbor resentment." Lu Qingqing's face immediately revealed a look of shame and indignation. She was a woman after all, and she had taken the initiative to do those things in the past. However, knowing it herself and having it revealed to Chu Xiu were two completely different concepts. Wu Tiandong's face was red, and his eyes revealed a trace of humiliation and hatred. When Chu Xiu didn't say it before, he could still play dumb. However, now that Chu Xiu had revealed everything, he couldn't even play dumb anymore. When he thought of how he used to flatter Lu Qingqing and how the other 3 had seen it, he was probably no different from an idiot in their hearts. The more Wu Tiandong thought about it, the angrier he became. He pointed at Cheng Buhui and said sternly, "Big brother, I've respected you as a father all these years. When I was pursuing fifth sister, if you said she was your woman, how could I have any improper thoughts about her? In the end, all of you knew, but none of you said it. In your eyes, do you still treat me, Wu Tiandong, as a brother? Do you all think I'm an idiot? Cheng Buhui's expression changed slightly. In fact, he really hadn't thought about it that way. In his opinion, what happened in the past was a misunderstanding. People in the pugilistic world didn't care about trifles, and he had never thought about marrying Lu Qingqing. Later, Wu Tiandong fell in love with Lu Qingqing. Could he really tell Wu Tiandong that Lu Qingqing was his woman, and also Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong's woman? If that was the case, the five of them would have broken up long ago. For Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong, they didn't say it because they didn't care about it at all. It was that simple. And you? Lu Qingqing. Am I no different from an idiot in your eyes? Wu Tiandong pointed at Lu Qingqing and shouted. One had to know that he had never raised his voice to Lu Qingqing before. A trace of anger appeared on Lu Qingqing's face. In fact, she really didn't care about Wu Tiandong from the beginning, including Wu Tiandong's confession of love. She actually rejected it. After all, compared to Cheng Buhui and Dong Xiangyi, the gap between Wu Tiandong and them was too big. She subconsciously resisted it. Later, when Lu Qingqing realized that it was really impossible for her to be with Cheng Buhui and Dong Xiangyi, she began to try to accept Wu Tiandong. In the end, such a thing happened. But she didn't think that she had wronged Wu Tiandong, because until now, she hadn't promised him anything. Dong Xiangyi frowned and said, "Fourth brother, love between a man and a woman is just a small matter. Are you going to fall out with Big Brother and us because of this small matter?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's right. Love between a man and a woman is just a small matter. Fighting for power is a big matter. Dong Xiangyi, I told you before that you want to make a name for yourself with the help of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong and then return to the Jailing Dong family openly. But as long as Cheng Buhui is alive, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will always be synonymous with Cheng Buhui. You, Dong Xiangyi, are just one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong and will never be able to stand out. Why don't you join forces with me now? I'll help you get rid of Cheng Buhui and the others, and I'll bear the blame for you. From now on, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will respect you, and the reputation that Cheng Buhui and the others left behind will all belong to you." Seeing that Cheng Buhui and the others were looking at him, Dong Xiangyi shouted, "Nonsense! When did I want to fight for power with Big Brother? With the 5 of us, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will be the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Without Big Brother, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will really be gone." Among the people present, Dong Xiangyi was actually the least afraid of Chu Xiu, because Chu Xiu had indeed said what he was thinking. That was true, but it was also just his thought, and there was no direct evidence, so he could completely deny it. In fact, when he denied it, Dong Xiangyi was really tempted for a moment, but it was only for a moment before he completely extinguished it. Humans were not plants, so how could they be emotionless? Dong Xiangyi was indeed a little utilitarian, including his so-called chivalrous deeds. But after all, he had been sworn brothers with Cheng Buhui for so many years, and he knew what kind of person Cheng Buhui was. No matter how utilitarian he was, he could not join forces with Chu Xiu to kill his former big brother, even if he really wanted the reputation that Cheng Buhui had. However, at this time, Cheng Buhui and the others looked at Dong Xiangyi with a somewhat complicated gaze. No one was an idiot. They all knew that Dong Xiangyi used to be very calculative and utilitarian, but they did not expect that Dong Xiangyi would want so many things. At this time, when Chu Xiu said all these, Cheng Buhui and the others thought of the little things that Dong Xiangyi used to get along with them. Indeed, sometimes Dong Xiangyi would steal Cheng Buhui's limelight, but at that time, they did not care. Because Cheng Buhui did not care about fame, the others did not say anything, but now it seemed that Dong Xiangyi had some other intention since they became sworn brothers. Chapter 303. Under Chu Xiu's incessant provocation, the rift between the Jiangdong's 5 heroes was getting bigger and bigger. Even Xiu Dongmao, who was at the back, was shocked when he heard that. In eastern Qi, the Jiangdong's 5 heroes were quite famous, and all of them were positive. Some people even claimed that if one of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes could step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm and combine with the connections that the Jiangdong's 5 heroes had accumulated over the years, it would become a community of eastern Qi. Unfortunately, the people in Jianghu would not live to see that day. Every word that Chu Xiu said was like the tip of a knife, stabbing into the hearts of the people present. The rift could no longer be mended. At this time, LV Tong closed his eyes. He seemed to have mentally prepared himself for something and said to Cheng Buji in a decisive tone, "Big brother, you saved my life. When I was in the Blue Dragon Society, I never felt like a human. I only regarded myself as a sword, a killing machine without feelings. It was not until I met you that I knew what a human was. The hegemon sword villa was destroyed by the Azure Dragon Society, and your father was also killed by me. Chu Xiu wasn't wrong about this. Since it has happened, I can only compensate with my life. I can also help you get rid of all the obstacles behind you before committing suicide. In the next life, we will be brothers again." As soon as he finished speaking, the blood avoidance sword in LV Tong's hand emitted a hazy blood-red light. Even half of his body was dyed blood-red. LV Tong chose to burn his blood essence as soon as he arrived. What shocked everyone was that LV Tong did not attack Chu Xiu. Instead, he chose to kill Dong Xiangyi with his sword. Only then did everyone understand what LV Tong meant by the obstacle. The obstacle was not Chu Xiu, but Dong Xiangyi. LV Tong was an extreme and stubborn person. Sometimes, even Cheng Buji could not stop him. In LV Tong's opinion, Dong Xiangyi was not a mole and was ready to die. Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingxing were weak, so it did not matter even if they were moles. Moreover, after this incident, they would no longer have anything to do with the Jiangdong's 5 heroes. Therefore, from this perspective, Dong Xiangyi, whose ambition had been exposed by Chu Xiu, was the biggest threat to Cheng Buji. Moreover, Dong Xiangyi had previously revealed his restlessness and ambition. At that moment, LV Tong had made a decision to kill Dong Xiangyi. If Dong Xiangyi died, it would be fine, but if he did not, he would commit suicide on the spot and give his life to his brother. Cheng Buji's expression suddenly changed when he saw this, and he shouted, "No!" Unfortunately, Lu Tong was a stubborn man. Once he made up his mind, even Cheng Buhui could not persuade him, let alone Lu Tong, who was ready to die. Cheng Dong Xiu and wanted to stop LV Tong. To be honest, Cheng Buji did have mixed feelings when he found out that LV Tong was the person who killed his father. However, Cheng Buji was broad-minded. He quickly figured out the crux of the matter. The Blue Dragon Society was an assassin organization. All the assassins in the Blue Dragon Society were their employers' swords and knives. They were emotionless killing machines. His real enemy was the person who hired the Blue Dragon Society to kill him, not LV Tong. Even if LV Tong did not make a move, the Blue Dragon Society would have sent other assassins to destroy his hegemon sword villa. Therefore, this could only be a coincidence and a misunderstanding. However, Cheng Buji had accepted it, but LV Tong did not. He wanted to use his own life to kill Cheng Buji. Why did he have to do that? However, just as Cheng Buhui was about to make a move, Chu Xiu's figure had already appeared in front of Cheng Buhui. He said expressionlessly, "Great hero Cheng, the show has just begun. I can't let you interrupt it. Right now, your opponent is me. Get lost." Cheng Buji yelled. His eyes were bloodshot. His killing intent was surging. He had made an enemy of Chu Xiu to protect Xiu Dongmao. To put it in a more grandiose way, it was for his own beliefs. Now, he really wanted to kill Chu Xiu. After Chu Xiu's words, the Jiangdong 5 heroes had completely broken off. Even if they did not die today, they would never be able to go back to the past. Moreover, it was also because of Chu Xiu that his third brother wanted to fight with his second brother. This was something that Cheng Buhui absolutely could not tolerate. Even if Dong Xiangyi was ambitious, Cheng Buji did not want to lose the brotherly relationship between them as long as he did not make a move. However, after Chu Xiu's casual words, he caused the brothers to kill each other and completely break off their relationship. At this moment, Cheng Buji really wanted to kill Chu Xiu. The light Yu heavy sword exploded with boundless might, causing a powerful sonic boom to resound through the air. The heavy sword slashed towards Chu Xiu, bringing with it an unparalleled might. In the past, when facing Cheng Buji, Chu Xiu had actually held back a little. However, this time, Chu Xiu also wanted to kill. The show had begun. Since the Jiangdong 5 heroes were determined to stop him, Chu Xiu would not be lenient. In fact, Chu Xiu admired people like Cheng Buji. Unfortunately, he would never be a person like Cheng Buji. Moreover, admiring him didn't mean that Chu Xiu would be merciful. Just as Cheng Buji made his move, Chu Xiu blasted out the Wisdom Fist seal. It covered heaven and earth and sealed off the space. Cheng Buji's heavy sword struggled to break through the big net of Gang Qi created by the Wisdom Fist seal. However, its speed was extremely slow. At the same time, the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand became extremely evil. The powerful demonic aura merged with the scarlet blood divine power and intertwined with each other. He slashed out a strange and evil devil blade of Avicii. However, this time, Chu Xiu did not use the powerful blade momentum. Instead, he chose to absorb the demonic aura from the devil blade of Avicii into his body. It turned into a strange and evil blade momentum and slashed toward Cheng Buji. During the previous fight, Chu Xiu was not only training his realm, but also familiarizing himself with Cheng Buji's martial arts route. In reality, the martial arts that Cheng Buji grasped were not very strong. Whether it was his inner force or his techniques, they could only be considered ordinary. After all, the hegemon sword villa that he came from was only a small village. All these years, Cheng Buji did not take on a master, nor did he choose to rely on other forces. His strength was obtained through killing in the Jianghu. In a simple and direct manner, he used his strength to break through everything. On the other hand, Chu Xiu's martial arts were much more complicated than Cheng Buji's. It could be said to be strange and ever-changing. When it needed to be overbearing, it would be overbearing. When it needed to be evil, it would naturally be incomparably evil. Before the Buddhist light created by the Wisdom Fist seal dissipated, Chu Xiu's devil blade of Avicii had already slashed over with blood-colored Gang Qi. The blade momentum was strange and ever-changing. When the two combined, it actually gave off an extremely mystical feeling. Cheng Buji's face was filled with murderous intent. The light mountain sword in his hand exploded with a dazzling light. The heavy sword's blade seemed to weigh thousands of kilograms. It was as if he was going head-on against Chu Xiu, disregarding the consumption of his own inner force to fight head-on. Under the so-called pure power, whether it was the Wisdom Fist seal spatial seal or the devil Qi drawn by the devil blade of Avicii, they all shattered. Under this series of attacks, although Chu Xiu's attacks were all broken, in reality, Cheng Buji was the one who exhausted the most. At this moment, he was also the most anxious because Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong had already started fighting. LV Tong was truly not afraid of death. Or rather, he was already prepared to die for Cheng Buji. Therefore, when he fought with Dong Xiangyi, he used almost all his strength to attack. He actually managed to force Dong Xiangyi, who was stronger than him, to retreat step by step. He did not dare to fight head-on. After all, LV Tong had the will to die, but he, Dong Xiangyi, did not. Dong Xiangyi blocked LV Tong as he shouted, "Fourth brother. Fifth sister. Third brother has gone crazy. Come and help me. There was a hint of struggle in Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing's eyes, but neither of them moved. Wu Tiandong did not move because he was angry with both of them. Now that he saw them fighting to the death, Wu Tiandong even felt a little happy. Naturally, he would not come. Moreover, LV Tong had already started to fight desperately. If he rashly made a move, it was very likely that he would be killed by the angry LV Tong. The same was true for Lu Qingqing. She had already lost enough face today, and she did not want to stand out and embarrass herself at this time. Moreover, even if she was shameless, it would be useless for her to go forward with her strength. Moreover, she thought more than Wu Tiandong. Now that her suspicions had appeared, Chu Xiu had also pointed out Dong Xiangyi's thoughts. Although there was no evidence, it was obvious that Dong Xiangyi was also ambitious. Eldest brother would definitely not kill Dong Xiangyi. Wouldn't it be better to let LV Tong do it now? Not only would he get rid of one person, he could also make the other person bear all the blame, and he would become a tragic hero. This could be said to be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Of course, in reality, Cheng Buhui's thoughts were not as complicated as Lu Qingqing thought. The only thing he wanted now was to save Dong Xiangyi and calm LV Tong down. Therefore, when Chu Xiu stuck close to him to stop him, Cheng Buhui burned his blood essence in anger. In an instant, the Qingyue was covered by the crimson blood flame. The heavens are vigorous, so a gentleman should constantly strive to improve himself. The earth is Kun, so a gentleman should be virtuous. Cheng Buhui's sword momentum was not agile, but only steady and domineering. As the sword fell, Chu Xiu's devil chi suddenly shattered. Before the sword fell to the ground, the entire ground had already been shaken by Cheng Buhui's blow, leaving a deep sword mark. The internal binding seal exploded, and Chu Xiu's figure quickly retreated. However, at this time, Cheng Buhui had already made up his mind to kill Chu Xiu and had even burned his blood essence. How could he let Chu Xiu escape so easily? He spat out a mouthful of blood on his Qingyue, and the dark red blood condensed into a strange rune, causing his Qingyue sword to explode with a tremendous force. As the sword fell, everything around it was drawn by this sword, forming a huge Gang Qi storm around Cheng Buhui. This was Cheng Buhui's trump card, and also the martial art technique that he did not want to use the most. It was a secret technique of the devil path, the Kun symbol sword technique. Chapter 304. The origins of Cheng Buhui's martial arts were very complicated. He mainly cultivated some simple inner force and sword techniques that were passed down from his ancestors in the Hegemon sword villa. Although they were ordinary, he relied on his great willpower to cultivate to his current level. He was even able to contend against Chu Xiu, who had a full set of high-grade techniques. However, this did not mean that Cheng Buhui did not have any other trump cards other than these basic techniques. The Kun symbol sword technique was one of them. Cheng Buhui had been chivalrous all these years and killed many villains. He had also obtained many powerful demonic secret techniques from them. However, Cheng Buhui did not choose to cultivate any of them. This was because most of the techniques that these villains cultivated were incomparably evil. It was too different from Cheng Buhui's martial arts, so it was not suitable for him to cultivate even if he wanted to. However, the Kun symbol sword technique was a famous demonic secret technique in the past. It was a part of the 8 extreme demonic book. He only needed to use his blood essence to activate it, so he did not need to pay any other price. This was also the only demonic technique that Cheng Buhui had cultivated all these years. It was his true trump card. With the support of the Kun symbol sword technique, Cheng Buhui, who was originally very powerful, became even more ferocious and violent. Under the endless astral energy storm, even the ground was swept into a mess. Although Chu Xiu had the internal binding seal in his hand, the surrounding astral energy was constantly pulling him back, forcibly pulling him back. Within the astral energy storm, Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a surging murderous intent. This was the second time in so many years that he wanted to kill someone so much. The first time was when he learned that the Hegemon sword villa had been destroyed. At that time, he wanted to find the culprit and kill him. Of course, the person that Cheng Buhui wanted to kill at that time was not Lu Tong, but the person who instigated the Blue Dragon Society to destroy his Hegemon sword villa. Now, the person that Cheng Buhui wanted to kill was Chu Xiu, the Chu Xiu who had destroyed the Jiangdong 5 heroes. Against Cheng Buhui's sword, Chu Xiu sheathed his saber and formed a seal. However, the seal he formed this time was incomparably complicated and took the longest time. When Cheng Buhui's sword that brought along a boundless Gang Chi storm arrived before him, his seal was only just completed. At the same time, when the seal landed, it also exploded with a supreme divine light. 5 different colors of light constantly appeared in Chu Xiu's hands. They were connected head to tail like a wheel, endlessly multiplying. Zai word technique, sun will seal. 5 elements, attack must counter. Wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. 5 different types of attacks were unleashed at the same time. The power of the 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other. It was like the great sun will was rotating. This was the sun will seal. Among them, the Aquarius seal and the sun will seal were the most exhausting ones. Originally, Chu Xiu did not want to use the sun will seal now. Originally, Chu Xiu didn't want to use the sun will seal right now, because the most suitable time to use the sun will seal was the 5 Chi's origin realm. At that time, the 5 elements would circulate, and the 5 Chi's would become one. When using the sun will seal, there would be almost no backlash. However, facing Cheng Buhui's Kun word technique, Chu Xiu had no way of dealing with the extreme power. He could only use an equally powerful force to block it. This was also the martial Dao that Cheng Buhui had always adhered to. There were no miraculous transformations, only pure power to crush everything. The 5-colored wheel of light transformed and clashed with Cheng Buhui's sword. Instantly, an earth-shattering sound was heard. Countless earth chi exploded in the surroundings, tearing the ground apart and causing countless gravel to fly. In the middle of the storm, the 5 elements in Chu Xiu's fist seal continued to spiral and collapse. Even if his inner force was raised to the extreme, it was of no use. Chu Xiu could only use the internal lion seal to suppress himself. Only then could he withstand the powerful force. However, his body was forced to retreat more than 10 steps. Even his arms were trembling. Traces of blood appeared and dyed Chu Xiu's arms red. The collision between the sun will seal and the Kun word technique was too powerful. It was so powerful that even Chu Xiu's body could not withstand it. A strand of blood flowed out from Chu Xiu's mouth, but he only casually wiped it off. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he looked at Cheng Buhui, who was in the middle of the storm. That was because Cheng Buhui's injuries were more serious than his. In a battle between the two, the one who risked his life first would lose. Cheng Buhui was anxious and risked his life, but he did not risk his life to kill Chu Xiu. Therefore, the one who died was him. The dust and earth chi dissipated. Cheng Buhui's majestic figure was swaying and his face was extremely pale. Although the Kun word technique was based on the 8 extremities force, it was also a demonic technique. It was a secret technique that burned one's blood essence to fight for one's life. The backlash was much more severe than Chu Xiu's sun will seal. Raising the light mountain sword in his hand, Cheng Buji gritted his teeth and wanted to attack again. However, at this time, he realized that Lu Tong had actually forced Dong Xiangyi to his limits. In the end, Lu Tong ignited his blood essence, causing both his body and the blood avoidance sword in his hand to be suffused with a demonic blood-red color. With a desperate attack, he actually killed Dong Xiangyi. No one had expected this to happen. Although the 5 heroes of the River East had sworn an oath based on their age, it also represented their strength. Dong Xiangyi was ranked second, and his strength was also second. He was slightly ahead of LV Tong. However, he died in the hands of LV Tong. Even Dong Xiangyi himself could not believe this result. Dong Xiangyi regretted not agreeing to Chu Xiu's condition and joining forces with him to kill Chengbuhui and the others. Dong Xiangyi finally realized that he was still selfish. Compared to his brother's lives, he valued his own life and interests more. Unfortunately, he did not have a second chance. Chu Xiu gave him a chance, but he did not grasp it. He could not blame anyone else. Second brother. Chengbuhui let out a loud roar. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with sorrow. Even though Dong Xiangyi was ambitious and had his own thoughts, Dong Xiangyi was still his brother for many years. They had fought side by side and supported each other countless times. However, Dong Xiangyi had died in the hands of his own people. This was an outcome that Chengbuhui could not accept. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu used the extreme speed of the internal binding seal and arrived in front of Chengbuhui in an instant. The demonic aura on the heavenly demon dance soared into the sky and directly slashed down with great power. Chengbuhui subconsciously blocked with his sword in sorrow. However, there were ripples in Chu Xiu's eyes. His eyes instantly became like an abyss, pulling Chengbuhui's mind and immersing him in them. He kept replaying the scene of Dong Xiangyi's death. The soul-shifting technique of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth. Under normal circumstances, when facing an enemy like Chengbuhui, the effect of the great art of extinguishing heaven and earth and soul-shifting was limited or even ineffective. This was because Chengbuhui was stronger than Chu Xiu and his state of mind was also extremely strong. There was no loophole at all. Now that Dong Xiangyi had just been killed, it could be said that this was the most unacceptable thing to Chengbuhui. Therefore, Chu Xiu used this to pull Chengbuhui's mental strength into it. Although Chengbuhui reacted almost immediately and wanted to break free, it was already too late. The heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand had already fallen. It cut open his heavy sword and left a hideous knife mark on Chengbuhui's chest. If Chengbuhui's reaction was not fast enough, Chu Xiu's knife would have completely taken his life. The demonic aura entered his body and Chengbuhui spat out a mouthful of blood. He was seriously injured at this moment. While resisting Chu Xiu, Chengbuhui shouted at Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing, fourth brother. Fifth sister. The 5 of us have been roaming the martial world together for so long. Let's forget about our past grievances. This time, I beg of you. Send Master Qiu to Black Glaze City. The reputation of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will still be there. Even in the underworld, I, Chengbuhui, will not live up to the name of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Chu Xiu continuously slashed with the demonic saber in his hand as he shook his head and said, "Why do you have to do this? Disregarding your own life for the sake of other people's lives. Is it worth sacrificing so much for a piece of trash who deceived you?" The Qingyue in Chengbuhui's hand had already begun to crack from the continuous slashes, but Chengbuhui still resisted and said in a hoarse voice, "It's too tiring for people to only care about their own interests in life. The 5 of us owe our benefactor a favor in the past, and now we have to return it. Even if what we have to pay is several times or even dozens of times more than the favor, we still have to return it. Let's not talk about chivalry, we just want to have a clear conscience." Chu Xiu shook his head. He really couldn't understand a person like Chengbuhui. He was a determined person, but he was also a stubborn person. Among those who achieved great things, at least 80% of them had this kind of trait. However, the other 20% of luck was extremely important. Chu Kuanga had succeeded in the past, so he became a hero respected by millions. Now, it was obvious that Chengbuhui had failed. Chu Xiu coldly said to Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing, "I've given each of you a chance. Now, I'll give you one last chance. Capture Qiu Dongmao and hand him over to me after I kill Chengbuhui. You can live, and you can live very well. Otherwise, I'll send all of you to the underworld to become sworn brothers. Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing looked at each other, and both of them showed signs of struggle in their eyes. It would be useless for them to save Chengbuhui now. It would be no different from sending themselves to their deaths. Chu Xiu's strength had already exceeded their imagination. He was an existence that completely surpassed the three-flower realm. They would only be sending themselves to their deaths if they went. However, if they had to choose to stand on Chu Xiu's side and drag out an ignoble existence, they would not be able to do such a thing. Although Wu Tiandong resented Chengbuhui and the others, he had still been brothers with Chengbuhui for so many years. Others aside, at least Chengbuhui had taught him many things. It was the same for Lu Qingqing. Back then, Chengbuhui was the one who saved her. Even if Lu Qingqing wanted to find a safe way out, they could not just let her betray Chengbuhui. Therefore, the two of them looked at each other, gritted their teeth, and immediately carried Qiu Dongmao away. They did not want to die, nor did they want to betray Chengbuhui. There was only one choice left for them, and that was to escape. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.